watching right now. Now, during the original live stream of the Artemis launch, the live stream that we had on this channel, I found out after the fact that Sacred was, in fact, watching that live. He was watching that live, although I didn't see him say anything in the in DMs. I didn't see him comment on the actual live stream. So if he is watching, then it's not really he's not really the live chat type of guy. But I'm going to go ahead and just make a prediction, a guess, an educated guess that after seeing the awesome amount of evidence that we were able to gather from this launch, the fact that we caught the liftoff in beautiful detail, we caught the booster separation in amazing detail. I think the best video of booster sep on YouTube and anywhere else for that matter. I spoke too fucking soon. Sacred, welcome to the show. Finally, it's been a long time coming.
Hold on, Rez. Hold on. Let me get set up. I'm like listening to y'all while I'm like moving around. Hold on. I didn't even know y'all was live. Hold on real quick.
Sounds like a plan. So, but what I was going to say is that it's actually this is very formidable evidence, and that might make him a little bit, wary about coming on. But we got to be kind here. Unless your name is Flatzoid, in which case be as mean as you want, because if you're a disingenuous piece of shit like Flatzoid, you kind of deserve to be called out for the fucking liar that you are. And so if you get called out for modifying videos to suit a bullshit narrative that you're trying to push, then you apologize for it, say it was an accident, but then you say later on that it was an accident, that you actually did that shit on purpose because reasons. Then you backpedal on that claim only to go back for it later on. At this point, everyone should be real comfortable with the fact that they should not take your shit seriously. Just throwing that out there. Astronomy Live. Let me go ahead and full screen you right now.
Yes.
Would you explain what we're seeing here?
So this is the viewfinder tracking camera that I used on my scope to do the tracking for Artemis. So I went back to the old LX200 Classic, which unfortunately doesn't support direct drive rate control. So it doesn't allow for compatibility with the predictive tracking feature of Rocket Tracker that you were using to track. So you were using the orbital trajectory, or not the orbital, the launch trajectory of the rocket to track it and make fine corrections with the joystick. I was using video-based tracking to track it almost exclusively until SRB SEP. So I basically have that blue box there. That's my mouse cursor, and I'm able to lock onto any bright source, and it will automatically follow that source and allow me to have hands-free tracking. So then you have the sort of crosshair with the purple circle, and you have the target sort of go-to position with the red box, so I can drag around where I want to position the rocket in the frame with the red box. And so I was basically doing full hands-off auto tracking for the launch, and that allowed me to focus on the telescope itself and adjust the actual focus of the telescope to keep the rocket sharply in focus the whole launch, and then also adjust the finder camera. So you can see how bright it is when it comes off the pad. This thing lit up the sky, lit up the horizon, but as it starts to go higher and higher, it gets dimmer. And so I actually opened up the iris more right there on the finder camera to let more light in as it started to dim. So having hands-free tracking allows you to focus on other aspects of filming the rocket and not have to worry about, making manual corrections and that kind of thing.
I gotta say that this shit's really fucking awesome. This is what they call a nerdgasm right here.
To toot my own horn here for a second.
True, all of y'all had a fucking nerdgasm.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to toot my own horn here for a second, I without naming names, I've seen other programs that attempt to do this, in the space of filming rocket launches and that kind of thing. And some of them are good, some of them are not as good, but I kind of feel like mine's the best. Oh, is that arrogant of me? Is that unfair? Is that arrogant of me?
No,
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 it
not
is not
unfair.
a superiority complex if you are superior.
That's a scary thing coming from you, Gio.
Ooh.
Why?
I can't imagine why. I don't know. It just is.
It just is. We'll have to reference history for that joke. But anyway, I have. Let me go ahead and get that back up again because Sacred. Don't know if you heard it, but I actually discovered something new within my own footage thanks to the sharp eyes of Astronomy Live here.
Hold on, what y'all find? What y'all find?
In the launch tower, or I'm sorry, not the launch tower, the escape tower for the launch abort system, as the rocket is later and later into its flight, it no longer needs that tower, and so it gets jettisoned off. And I actually caught that. You did not see that on the official NASA live stream because you said they switched cameras to some low res telemetry view rather than the actual view of the rocket itself.
I mean, we all saw it though. It wasn't just me saying it. We all seen us doing some weird shit. But I'm gonna let y'all finish. Go ahead.
All right. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna present my screen right here so you can see this shit. So what I have here is the original timeline. This is from the video, so you can kind of see. This is all the shit that goes into the YouTube video. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do two things. I'm going to get to the time code, which was 432, 433, 431, somewhere around there. And I'm going to make this screen as big as possible. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in on this shit so you can actually see this, because this is fucking awesome. So zoomed in all the way here. Now I'm going to take this frame by frame. We're going to go to 37, I think.
Stop that was. You didn't see it?
Yeah,
It was right there.
There's a little sheen, a little. Let me see. Go back. Oh, right there.
There we go.
You see that? You see that glint right there? Circling with the mouse, Sacred. You see that right there?
Yeah, that little light to the bottom left.
Yeah. So Astronomy Live, explain.
So that is the service module fairing that protected the service module during descent. At this point, they're so high up that they are essentially out of the atmosphere, and they don't need that kind of aero protection for the service module anymore. So they eject it away from the rocket to save on weight, and that's what you see there. As it tumbles, it catches the light from the engines and reflects that back to the camera. And so you'll see it blink twice as it tumbles and falls away from the rocket.
I'm taking this frame by frame so you can see there it is as it's spinning out, and that's when it's reflecting back at the camera. So now if I go forward in time a bit, oh, hang on, I missed it. There's another right there. There it is again. Right there. So basically that item is tumbling, and as it tumbles, there'll be a point in its tumble where it's aligned so that I can actually see the
Red, you just cut out.
Uh-oh, NASA again. Let me say, hey, you showing too much, Reg. Got to get him out of here.
So I can see
Yeah,
the
hang
camera.
on. We had a
Oh,
like
now
this.
your audio's back.
Oh, I'm back.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, perfect. I don't know what that was, but anyway, the panel tumbles, and now I can see. At this point of its tumble, it's reflecting the light just so I can see it in the camera. That's pretty fucking awesome. You got to admit, that's pretty fucking awesome. But that's not all, Sacred. I actually caught something else. So I'm going to go forward to 337. I'll probably have to realign the zoom, or maybe not.
There
Oh,
we
there
go.
it is.
I'll realign it real quick for you. Let me move this down.
Yo,
There it
StreamYard needs emoji reactions, yo. They need to update their shit.
Yeah, but you see this right here? That is, I'm going to take it frame by frame. That is the escape tower right there being jettisoned off of the rocket. I actually caught that shit and I didn't even realize it. And this is something that was not shown on the NASA live feed. And oh wait, I gotta read this super chat real quick. I almost missed it. Slick666 for £5 says, Red, Astronomy Live, thank you for being there for me. I'm doing okay. That's really good to hear, dude. Again, if you ever need anything, you can reach out. But thank you so much for your support. It does mean a lot to me.
Hey guys, Reds could read. He just made a mistake. He knows it says silk. Don't worry about it. But tell that man to unblock that flat earther that was in your chat, yo. I don't like coming up here and y'all silencing flat earthers. That's not what we do, and you know that, Red.
Depends on which
That's not true.
flat earther. There's a few flat earthers that I will outright call disingenuous pieces of shit, and one of them, like I said, is Flatzoid. But that's a story for another time. If a flat earther were to actually come into this room, I'll allow them in. That's not a problem.
Well, don't worry. I think if Flatzoid sees footage of an abort motor coming off an SLS, that will give him PTSD.
Exactly. You know, we shouldn't talk about the 11 frames. Do not talk about the 11 frames. Anyway.
What, that's what they were picking out, like some frames or some like 11 frames that was fucked up or something?
He cut out 11 frames on purpose to make a point, which was disingenuous as fuck.
Yeah, with Red's footage.
Yeah, with my footage. There was that. I'll get to that story. I'll actually show the video so you can see what I'm referring to. Hi, Bob, the science guy. Nice seeing you in the live chat. But at the time that NASA switched over to that telemetry view, which I'm going to agree with Astronomy Live here was a piss poor decision, and also agree with Sacred that was a piss poor decision. 0 out of 10 would not recommend. I'm happy that we were there because we're not involved with, the fucking NASA cameras and shit like that. We really should be. They should definitely call us and allow us to take control of things and tell them how to do it. I'm sure we would do a much better job. But despite NASA fucking up on that part, we were actually able to not fuck up that part. And right there, I'm going to go through the frames again. So I'm going back in time now. All right, so there you see just the fire and badassery as I'm looking down the engines here. And then I'm going forward in frame by frame, and there, right there, the abort tower going away from the rocket. That is fucking mental. I did not know I actually caught that in my own footage. This shows that when NASA said, hey, we went ahead and jettisoned the abort tower, and it showed it on that telemetry screen or whatever, that they weren't talking out of their asses. Yeah, that was a CG view, but it actually happened in reality. This is independently confirmed to have happened. And it's not just on my video, it's also on Astronomy Live's video. And in fact, he's playing it on repeat right now. So what I'm going to do, stop sharing. I'm going to full screen Astronomy Live here so you can see it. So this is his view of that event.
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys can see it, but if you look real close, it's real faint. But right before the abort tower becomes visible separately from SLS's RS-25 glare there, the 4 main engines glowing brightly in the middle, you can actually see the plume from it cross the field of view all the way out to the left edge of this frame. It's real faint. It's like a little wispy cloud that appears and goes quickly across the frame right before the abort tower appears. So the exhaust of that abort tower accelerated very quickly and crossed that field of view, and then it appeared separately from SLS. So you can really see this really is a miniature rocket ejecting off the front of the capsule.
That is amazing. Like I said, I didn't even know that was in my video. Didn't even know. And that was unedited. That was done live in front of all you guys. I mean, Sager, you have to admit, that's pretty fucking badass, isn't it?
So look, y'all, for y'all who don't know, me and Reds over the past couple weeks or months or whatever the case is, we kind of developed a rapport because I feel like we do have somewhat of a respect for what we do in our own right. He comes to our spaces over on Twitter. I don't know if he already talked about that because I jumped on live late. Sorry about that. But he continues to come back because I feel like he understands what I'm trying to accomplish, which is finding the truth, and I'm not out here bullshitting, right? And I will call a spade, and I will keep everything 100. That's how I handle every conversation, every debate, all dialogue, right? And I think Reg understands that. On the opposite side, I respect Reg for doing his own work. Now, his perspective may be a little bit skewed, but see, this type of thing right here, what you guys are showing, this is what I respect about y'all. Because you got to admit, you can't blame people who have questions, and then you have people like or organizations like NASA that royally fuck shit up like this. Like, how many times has stuff like this happened over the course of years, where we're looking at this stuff that they're putting out to the masses, and we're getting nothing like this. We're not getting any images. We're not getting the full uncut views. We're missing all these little lights on the screen that all the nerds is having orgasms over. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is the stuff that y'all really should be appreciating. Reds and Astronomy Live. I don't really watch all of his stuff yet. I just found out about astronomy, but I still respect everything that astronomy does. But this is the thing that y'all really can't hold flat earthers or globe disbelievers accountable for, because why can't NASA do this? This is like, and what you said earlier, Red, is that they should hire y'all to do this, but then y'all will be discredited by the truther community. So you really are in a tough spot. You know what I'm saying? So I can acknowledge that. But this is, to me, this is the whole reason why a group of people across this plane separated from the mainstream science, because they royally fuck up all the time. They mess simple things up. I mean, Reds and Astronomy Live don't have a simple setup. It's legit. You know, I fuck with it completely and wholeheartedly. But why can't NASA get us this type of stuff? If nobody knew about Reds and Astronomy's channel, they would literally be having the same exact view that I had when I first watched the stuff, because I watched it on Twitter, and they were cutting it. They were cutting feeds. They were missing shots. Like, there was a CGI rocket on some type of telemetry. What do you call it? A telemetry scale or something like that. I'm like, I don't care about none of this. What is it called?
The telemetry view.
Yeah. I don't care about none of this. If I'm trying to look at something that is historic, why are you cutting the scene, yo? Just take all questions off the table. Take all doubt off the table. Give us one high resolution shot. There's no reason why two random YouTubers have like the best footage of NASA's 50, 40, 60-year project, or however long this shit took. Why do y'all got the best footage? Like, you really can't blame people for having questions when we're looking at the official footage, and then we realize that I don't know, what do you call it? You got amateur footage. I'm not trying to disrespect, but this is what would be called amateur footage, right?
Amateurs, yeah.
Yeah. So why would the amateur footage better than the professional footage? You got to cut flat earthers some slack, because if they've been making these type of mistakes over decades of time, clearly there's going to be people that's going to have questions. And then it takes somebody like y'all to come in here and say, look, guys, we have to do the whole one shot. We use the cameras that you guys want. We're doing this, we're doing that. We're going out of our way to appease anybody that's disbelieving in what they're saying is actually happening. And that's what I respect about that. I don't know if they're really going out into space for real, because I don't know if we could verify that. But this is the type of stuff that should be happening before. This is the type of content that we should be getting as a public, that we're paying for NASA and all these space agency programs to go up and give us this data, give us this imagery, and we're never getting it. So I just wanted to say that I do respect this. This is pretty cool footage. Still don't think it's going up into space, but I mean, like, this is a pretty good shot. So respect to you.
I mean, at this point, Sacred, did you see the footage that Astronomy Live showed earlier in the stream of the Orion module actually being filmed all the way halfway to the moon already?
No, I'm gonna have to run the stream back after.
No, we can just show it. We can just show it to you live again. And I'm pretty sure that Astronomy is gladly doing that now.
That was the whole point. Astronomy Live. Do you want to respond to what was just said before I bring up your views on?
Yeah, you can go ahead and bring them up, and while you do that, I'll just respond to that, because I think, to be fair to us, we have developed over years and a lot of effort and iterations a tracking setup and a filming setup that works really well with multiple telescopes, multiple camera types, and we've sort of fine-tuned and honed this to where it is now reliable and very high quality, And there are a few others who do go out of their way to do this kind of high quality documentation as well. I'll give a shout out to Cosmic Perspective, for example. They have some excellent footage, but I will say that there's a sort of a formula for professional photographers of launches that they are trying to, say, get on the cover of Aviation Weekly. Oddly specific notation there. And a shout out to John Krause, who had a spectacular still photo of the SLS rocket taking off next to the moon. And you could see the shock waves coming off the SRBs actually distorting the moon in the shot. So professional photographers like him are generally, not in all cases, but in most cases, taking still photos. They are not trying to best NASA at doing video footage, because their clientele are things like Aviation Weekly magazine and other publications like that are looking for still photos, pretty pictures to put up on their websites and on their magazines. And so the professional photographers, their whole job, their whole career is to cater to what their customers want. Their customers are publications, both mainstream media, legacy media, as well as digital media, that are looking for still photos to put with their stories and with their magazines, etc. And so they are doing their best job at getting still photos, which is a whole different ball game to what we're trying to do. In my opinion, we're not trying to even compete with the professional photographers, because we are trying to be videographers capturing video of these launches, and now, in my opinion, doing a better job than the official NASA live stream. As for why we're doing a better job than the official NASA live stream, there's a lot to be said there, and some of it might be a hot take to the people involved with that, and I don't want to disparage them. Certainly they're working hard, but they are sort of having a lot. They are being pulled in a lot of directions. They are being asked to provide the telemetry data that NASA wants to show. Look, here's us going to the moon, etc. And from that telemetry data, a lot of nerds like me can make calculations and figure out where the object is, where, how I can track it, all that kind of stuff. But from a videography standpoint, yeah, a lot of it is being done for test purposes and engineering purposes, and those purposes don't necessarily align with aesthetic purposes. We are capturing this for purely aesthetic purposes. I want the prettiest, nicest quality view I can possibly get. So what do I have? I have a telescope, and on that telescope I have a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera. This is a camera that's very popular with both amateur and sort of prosumer videographers for cinema purposes even. And you look at a channel like a YouTube channel like Corridor Digital. They had a whole video on this particular type of camera because they love it so much, because it's easily portable, it's lightweight, and it's good quality. And those are the properties I needed to be able to put it on a telescope that would not be so heavy as to throw the telescope off balance, but still be powerful enough to get really high quality footage. And it's not necessarily the camera you would pick if you were trying to acquire just purely scientific data, where you want to have very good repeatability in terms of photometry, where you're measuring the brightness of objects in space, that kind of thing. It's not for that. It's for videography. It's for cinematography. It is for capturing pretty video. And that is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to optimize towards capturing the most aesthetically pleasing videos I can possibly get. And that means very smooth tracking. That's what I've developed with Rocket Tracker over years. And now with predictive tracking, it addresses another challenge with trying to do video. When you're trying to do photos, right, no one cares or knows even if you lost it in the clouds for 10 seconds. It doesn't matter. You have a still photo here, and you have a still photo after the clouds. No one even knew that it was hidden behind clouds for 10 seconds. When you're doing video, it's a lot more challenging. And in terms of trying to keep a consistent track on the object. And so if it goes, say, behind clouds for 10 seconds, you would ideally want it to still be in frame when it comes back into view on the other side of those clouds. So to do that, I've developed predictive tracking in collaboration with Declan at flightclub.io. He does a great website where he produces these amateur predictions of the trajectories of these rockets, including this one. And so he offers that as a service, basically selling those trajectories. And then I buy those trajectories and put them into my program. And so anyone who's a customer of both his and mine can use his trajectory data to do predictive tracking on the rocket, and it will the telescope will follow the rocket based on the expected trajectory, and you can make corrections from there.
I also just want to jump in here and say, let's go ahead and just call it a job, just for the sake of this argument. This is the only job Astronomy Live and I have when it comes to rocket launches. NASA is also busy with other shit. I'm sure getting pretty pictures was the last thing on their mind, as opposed to making sure that this multi-billion-dollar rocket doesn't blow up on the launch pad.
Yeah, let me put a fine point on that for a second. Let me give it a very concrete example from the live stream. You had video at one point that had sort of all these numbers on the side. It looked like a HUD in an airplane, because I believe that was a shot from an airplane. If I'm not mistaken, that was a shot from the WB, I forget what it is, but there's a type of plane that they use for tracking these launches that has camera system that is pointing at the rocket while airborne. And why did they? Now, if you look at the quality of those pictures, I would say it's objectively worse aesthetically than our shots. But why? So why would they pick a worse quality view? Well, if you think about it like this, their purpose, again, is to get engineering data that if, God forbid, something should go wrong with the rocket, they want to make sure they have at least one camera on it at all times to see the thing going wrong. Now, if they happen to launch and there were some clouds, but clouds that didn't necessarily make it a no-go for launch, right? You can launch on a cloudy day just as long as it's within the parameters that allow for launch. But that might mean that you get only sporadic ground tracking footage. So you have an airborne vehicle like that above the clouds. Well, now you can guarantee that you can have end-to-end footage. But that quality of the footage may be degraded by the fact that you are now trying to track this from a moving airplane versus a big old telescope sitting on the ground. You're going to get better quality footage out of the big old telescope sitting on the ground, but there may be limitations in terms of how low that telescope can point relative to the horizon, whether it's blocked temporarily by clouds. And these are things that are of concern to an engineering perspective of trying to capture that data. So yes, they don't care. I mean, maybe they care about the trade-off, but it's a trade-off they're willing to take. Is okay, let's have quality.
Their purposes are different. They have different objectives.
Yes, exactly.
So,
our objective is high quality, aesthetically pleasing footage, even if it's blocked by clouds for a few seconds. That's just part of the story that we're documenting of what it's like to observe these launches. We're documenting a story, our observations, our perspective of seeing these launches. They are trying to capture the launch end to end with at least some kind of camera on it at all times, but they aren't necessarily set up in such a way that they're going to be able to show that to you in real time, depending on the setup. They might have a tracking setup somewhere that isn't transmitting live video, but it's recording it, etc. So they have different purposes, and those purposes aren't necessarily the same as ours.
And let me just ask, hey, Sacred, I have a question for you. Isn't it not valuable in some way, shape, or form to have footage from both NASA and the amateurs? Because you get not just two different perspectives, but you get footage that literally has two different purposes. That's just more context and more information to fill whatever gaps may be there. So rather than competing directly with NASA, we're actually aiding in explaining the overall picture of what actually happened in reality. Would you agree with me and say that that on its own is valuable?
I would, but I would also say, what type of footage would y'all get if NASA allocated $250,000 to you and Astronomy Live, or $500,000 to you and Astronomy Live? Now, we all know how much NASA makes, so that's why I would again ask you, what type of footage would you guys get if they only allocated a fraction of the budget of $500,000?
So the other thing to consider here, as silly as it is, now, and I don't even know politically all the reasons for this. I'm sure it has to do with who's in charge of NASA right now, and also who's in charge of other government agencies that put pressure on NASA. They are very ITAR happy right now, meaning they label things left, right, center as ITAR. ITAR is an international arms treaty that prevents the export of information that could be used to build missiles to do mean things like blow people up. So that also applies to civilian missiles and rockets that don't necessarily have a military purpose, like the SLS. And so, for example, after this launch, media photographers went back out to the pad to retrieve their remote cameras that they left behind at the launch pad closer than people can be, that are triggered automatically by sound, and they take still photos as the rocket goes up or video as the rocket goes up. And those cameras are retrieved a day or two later. When they went to retrieve them, they were told specifically, you are not allowed to take pictures of the launch tower. There's no rocket there now. Why are we not allowed to take pictures of the launch tower? Well, it turns out the reason is the launch tower was more damaged by those powerful SRBs than NASA was anticipating. And it blew open doors, it blew open parts of the launch pad that weren't normally supposed to be exposed. And that exposed what NASA considered to be ITAR information that is important to understand how to attach fuel lines to a rocket to fuel it up, that could be used by an enemy nation to start building an ICBM. So they prohibited photographers, told them not to take high quality photos of the launch tower. So you can imagine then why NASA doesn't necessarily want to point a $250,000 telescope at the launch tower as it goes up and show that to us, because it might accidentally reveal ITAR, what they would be tagging as ITAR related information. And then the person in charge of making that camera view a reality then gets charged with violating ITAR, and it's a whole big mess. It's a different situation for us as civilians who aren't on NASA property, who are filming this with the best equipment that we can get as amateurs. If we happen to catch something ITAR related, it's a more uphill battle maybe for the government to sort of come after us. And certainly we aren't.
But that only applies to people that you said are on NASA's property, right?
It does apply to people on NASA's property, but it applies to people on NASA's payroll. Like they can't.
So if we were given, like, let's say we were on NASA's payroll, and we said, okay, I want you to take control of the videography of this launch. We would also be subject to whatever limitations they put in place. And so the money may not actually be the limiting factor there. There may also be certain rules that we would have to follow, which money could not pay enough to get past.
So being on a payroll would actually
be
put into place regulations. Yeah, okay. So to regulate the type of things that you can or cannot record, that I will acknowledge that. I agree with that. Because if you are on a payroll and they have certain things as a, I don't know if they're a private company, but if there are some type of laws or restrictions that prohibit certain type of captures, then yeah, that wouldn't really do us no justice. So
but let me also challenge you, Sacred, on one thing you said previously. I would say that the amount of money, and let's say we were able to do a really good job and we were able to get all these nice, cool pictures, regardless of the security risk in there. Let's say we were able to ignore those security risks. NASA was to just come out one day and say, fuck it, we're going to give Red's Rhetoric and Astronomy Live open reign. They're going to put GoPros all over this shit and beam it down live for everyone to see. The mere fact that we would then be on NASA's payroll would immediately diminish the value of our footage to what is my target audience, which would be flat earthers, almost instantaneously. So
no, I said that, Rez. I don't know if you heard me.
Yeah.
I said that puts you in a rock and a hard place if you were on the payroll, because then you'll just completely just get discredited, even though if you might just follow the same procedure that you guys always follow. So I see,
correct.
you know,
so it wouldn't even matter. So basically the money's not the issue, just the mere fact that we would be on NASA's payroll and they said, hey, listen, we're actually going to pay you to film this rocket, that would immediately get discredited by flat earthers. And so it wouldn't actually matter. The mere fact that we are amateurs, that we are doing this, not being underneath the rules and regulations of ITAR, that actually makes our footage even more valuable, and more valuable than whatever NASA could even afford, at least from a flat earth perspective, right?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I'm just saying, like, if I'm going to be looking at amateur footage and it comes out this good, I'm not expecting to go to NASA and get shittier footage. I'm expecting like, oh shit, Astronomy Live and Red's got this. Let me go see what NASA got. You know how disappointed people, if anyone who didn't see the actual launch after seeing y'all footage, you know how disappointed people would be?
I mean, that's why we're there. We're there to get really damn good footage, because that's
That's my
literally our
whole
only
point
job.
though. That's literally my whole point. And just one more thing before, and I don't want to like derail the conversation, but this is the issue that I have with some globe earthers too as well. Like I'm looking in the chat, and it's almost like everyone's just defending what I'm saying instead of just saying, you know what, Sega, we agreed. NASA probably should be doing a better job. Like they're all just like, I remember when the Artemis failed the other couple of times, and I was in on Twitter, all on NASA's mentions, and every single globe earther on those mentions were literally bashing NASA. Oh, we should go to SpaceX. SpaceX sends rockets up 100 times a day. Why NASA do this? Why they worried about equalization of what was it? Something with race and women and trying to equalize the people in charge, and that's why everything got fucked up. Every globe earther was stepping all over NASA. It was the greatest thing just to watch. It was so entertaining. Then I look in the chat right now while I'm literally explaining why this is a problem.
Oh, did Sacred drop?
Sacred, you still there?
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can hear you. Go ahead and continue.
Oh, okay. Did it cut out the whole time that I was talking?
No, it cut out. It cut out the last 5 seconds. Just pick up from where you left off like 10 seconthis ago.
Okay, yeah, I was just saying, like, looking in the chat, I just see all the globe brothers kind of defending, NASA, like, if this and I don't know, I didn't want to jump over there because I don't want to rug or anything like that, but I just saw everyone bashing NASA when the Artemis didn't launch, saying, yo, we should just move everything to SpaceX. That was actually one of the topics in one of the spaces on Twitter that we were holding, like, all is this being set up for SpaceX to take over because NASA just keeps on dropping the ball over and over. I mean, you even said, Rez, how many times you got disappointed getting all set up, going over there and them scrubbing the launches. All those scrubs happen all the time, you guys say. But I mean, still, I don't see why there's such a hard let's just disagree with Sacred as soon as he starts talking because he's not a globe earther. Like, just listen to what I'm saying, y'all. If Rez and Astronomy Live is getting this type of footage, NASA should be getting better footage. I know there might be regulations and everything like that, but we cannot ignore that. There's no argument here. Like, this is just a fact. They got great footage and NASA has shitty footage, and that should not be a reality.
There's a difference between sort of what we want and what we would like to be the case, but the reality is often disappointing. And I think the reasons that we outlined are the reasons why it is disappointing in this case, that NASA doesn't offer even better footage than us. And to your point about the SpaceX thing, I do want to address that for a moment, because I think what you saw there, you may not be fully aware of, but like there is a cultural sort of divide there that is very, very stark in some cases, where you have some people who are just hardcore SpaceX fanboys and want everything to be SpaceX, and basically SLS they see as nothing more than a $100 billion boondoggle, and we should just cancel it.
These are the same people that only buy Teslas.
Yeah. On the other side of the equation, you do have people, and I would say they're probably less vocal that I've seen, at least on places like Twitter and other social media sites. But there are people who are hardcore SpaceX fanboys, even to the detriment of SpaceX in some cases. Again, there may be less numerous, but there are people who will bash SpaceX every time a Starship prototype blows up at Boca Chica, and they'll say, oh, they should cancel Starship. I find myself personally in the middle between those two groups. I don't put myself in either camp, where I'm either bashing SpaceX or bashing NASA when either one of them have a problem, because for both of them, they are both developing new rockets, and it's a very challenging process, and and SpaceX and NASA are taking very different approaches with it. Whereas Starship, they blow up prototypes all the time. SLS, they spent $100 billion to make sure that they got it right the first time. And they did. To their credit, they did. It's now, on its way to the moon. So there are different philosophies there, and there's a different culture there in terms of their fans. And you see a lot of those SpaceX fans every time SLS scrubs or whatever, or has to roll it back to the VAB. Yeah, it gives them tons of fodder to
They
bash
also don't
NASA.
have the luxury of blowing up a lot of prototype rockets. Elon Musk is worth so much money. He can actually afford to blow shit up. I mean, look at the first few test launches of Starship when it did its belly flop. That motherfucker blew up, and it made one hell of a fireball. But the difference is SpaceX can actually afford for that to happen. NASA, on the other hand, has to be super, super careful, make sure that every I is dotted, every T is crossed, make sure that everything is just perfect before they even remotely have the confidence of launching their rocket.
Yeah.
SpaceX, on the other hand, doesn't really have that limitation, but because they can actually afford to blow some shit up every now and then.
Yeah,
and
also, SpaceX is not beholden to the politicians and to the general public for everything they do. Yes, Starship is now a funded project for the human landing system for Artemis. It is going to be the lunar lander, essentially, for SLS. That's the idea. But at the end of the day, functionally, as an organization, they do not answer to the politicians. Senators can't just call up SpaceX and demand that they do X, Y, or Z, and then they have to do it. For NASA, they are very much beholden to the politicians. They don't get to decide what type of rocket they build. They may design the rocket, but ultimately it's the politicians who pass the budgets and tell them what they're going to build. SLS
pretty much
was jokingly referred to as the Senate launch system because Obama canceled the Constellation program. He canceled the Ares 1 and the Ares 5. And the Ares 5, if you look at it, it's in broad strokes somewhat similar to SLS. It has 2 SRBs, a center orange tank with the fuel tanks in the middle, and it's got some spatial domain engines on it, all that kind of stuff. But it was supposed to be a cargo-only vehicle. They then canceled that vehicle, and then the Senate pushed for a new vehicle instead, and that became SLS. So,
and also just wanted to jump in here for a sec here. Don't want to get bogged down with the culture between NASA, SpaceX, and stuff like that. Basically, two separate entities, two different ways of doing it. But I did want to kind of brute force it back on topic here, and just say that yes, we're able to get really good footage, and I'm actually very happy with the footage that we were able to capture. I think that between NASA's views and our views when it comes to what we were able to provide to the public, they complement each other rather than compete against each other, because at the end of the day, we all have the same goals, which is to get relevant shots and just more document. I think this has been the most documented rocket launch ever in terms of official sources and unofficial sources. So basically, flat earthers right now have the cream of the crop. They have so much to choose from. They can verify this from multiple different fucking angles. And
Reg, we should, man. It took y'all decades to get back up here. We've been waiting for this.
Well, now we have it. But with that, I'm going to share my screen here. And show one thing here. So what we have here is a meme shared by Sacred, where it shows the arc missing the moon. Now, to this, I want to actually show a clip captured by Astronomy Live, and I want him to explain what we're seeing, and then Sacred, you can reply after that. So I am now full screening this. Astronomy Live, please explain what we are looking at.
So this is a short time-lapse clip that I captured with no more than my Google Pixel cell phone, which has the astrophotography mode that lets you do long exposures. So this was about a 4-minute clip compressed into about 2 seconds. And what it shows is the Orion module an hour and 50 minutes after launch coming back around the Earth, having orbited once, and having just completed its TLI burn. It was increasing in altitude and rose into sunlight. It actually hit line of sight.
Astronomy Live.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that we're on the same page, please say what TLI is.
Translunar injection burn. So this is the burn that sends it to the moon. So when it launches, it initially goes into what we call a parking orbit. It is just a regular old low Earth orbit at a certain inclination, and that is to get it ready to go to the moon. It's just orbiting the Earth. If they didn't do anything else, it would be just like the space station. It would just be like any other Crew Dragon capsule. It would just orbit the Earth in a low Earth orbit. But if they activate the engine again, the upper stage engine, at just the right time, and they burn for the right amount, they change the orbit with what we call delta V, or change in velocity, and push the apoapsis of the orbit, the furthest point from Earth during the orbit, out to then reach the moon. So that's what they did. They did about an 18-minute burn to send this thing out to the moon. And then when that engine shut off, it continued to gain altitude, and it exited Earth's shadow. So if you watch this animation, when it loops back around for the first couple of frames, you don't actually see the streak. There's no streak there. Then suddenly it appears on the left side, but it doesn't come from off the field of view. It appears within the field of view. That's showing you it's actually exiting Earth's shadow. It's coming out of Earth's shadow in frame, and then it proceeds on down and to the right. It's actually moving towards the moon, both in terms of where the moon was in the sky and actually where it's going to go in space. The other thing you have to keep in mind, it's going to take days for the Orion capsule to reach the moon. So it's not going to coincide with the position of the moon in the sky the night of the launch. It's going to move gradually and consistently towards the point where the moon will be in the future when the spacecraft actually reaches the moon days later. So you have to keep that in mind. Just as a side note here at the top, that bright orange star, that's actually Mars there in the frame. So just a sort of touristy side note there. But yeah, you can see this Orion capsule come out of Earth's shadow and move towards the moon. This was, again, an hour and 50 so minutes after launch. Launch was about 1:44 a.m. So this puts us about 3:49 in the morning, I think. Now, at that time in the morning in Florida, you normally don't get satellites high in the sky like this appearing. This is something that you don't normally see because normal low Earth orbiting satellites are too low to have line of sight to the sun that high in the sky from Florida. This just tells you right away this thing's got to be really high, and it was gaining altitude consistently. And you can see here's the screenshot of NASA TV at the same time. At the same time that I took my clip there, you can see Florida below the spacecraft, and you can see the sun just cresting over the horizon and just starting to hit the spacecraft. And that's when you see it appear in my clip there. So that tells you, again, we have additional confirmation that this was not only in orbit, but it was on the trajectory they said it was. It was moving away from Earth, and it was now high enough that it actually hit sunlight right when I saw it appear back over Florida again an hour and 50 minutes after launch.
All right, just real quick before you move away from the screen, just explain this to me. This with this America with the America with the lights set up and everything, and it has the CGI rocket, whatever the case is. What direction is it going in this frame right here?
It's going from west to east.
From west to east. That's what it looks like. Now, so you guys were facing that way during this your GIF here? Is that the same direction?
Yeah, it's coming. So in my GIF, in my picture, actually, Red, if you can cut over to my webcam view, I have the full uncropped view here available. It was actually an even wider frame that I've punched in on that.
It's now showing full screen.
Okay, cool. So this is the full picture taken by the Google Pixel. So you can actually see my telescope there on the left. That is towards the west, and then to the right is east. So Red, you remember how we were set up facing the water, right? The water is just down. If you could imagine it, the water is down below the frame here, and my camera is the cell phone itself is sort of oriented parallel to that seawall, so that the camera is looking in such a way that that west is to the left in the frame and east is to the right.
All right, just making sure you on your toes, astronomy.
Yeah.
But now, just to address the image that Red's put up. So we hold spaces on Twitter every Friday. I love that shot, man. That shot of y'all set up, that is such a dope shot. I
Yeah,
will
just
always say that.
I'll let you finish, Sacred,
Yeah,
but
go
I
ahead.
wanted to add context to what Astronomy Live was saying. So this seawall right here is facing towards the rocket, so we're looking north. And if you were to go to the right, that would be looking due east. So Astronomy Live set up his telescope right here. So this right here is Astronomy Live's telescope. This is Astronomy Live's setup. My setup is right next to his, and there's the Nikon P1000, the flat earther camera of choice. And so you can kind of see how we were set up, and that kind of gives you spatial awareness, a little bit of spatial context as to how his scope was set up and how it was moving. And if you were to look at, like, for example, where we're looking at, this is right after the launch. So this is where the telescope and the Nikon ended up looking after all was said and done. And as you can see, it launched to the east. So when it comes back around the Earth, one orbit later, it's going to go to the east again. So it all lines up perfectly with what we would expect to see if this launch was legitimate. Anyway, you can go ahead and continue, Sacred.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, so yeah, I saw that. I saw that going around on Twitter. That the image that I shared. 'Cause like I said, we hold these Twitter spaces every Friday so that we can have these discussions: globe Earth, flat Earth, inner Earth, Dorito-shaped Earth, whatever you believe in. We invite all voices over here. But what happens is we never get no globe Earthers in our space. Some, but we never get all you hardcore chat motherfuckers coming into the space and sharing your ideas. All y'all do is troll in the mentions. So this is where I get engagement by putting up images for my spaces to get engagement from globe earthers, so you guys will actually come and join the stream. A lot of you guys say, I don't want to join an echo chamber, and all these extra excuses. But then when I post the image that Rez posted, you'll get all this engagement. All the globe earthers across the flat plane will find my Twitter space and finally have some engagement. They still won't grab the mic. But it's interesting that that's the only way I can get engagement with globe earthers who always say that flat earthers be running, right? It's like I hold up a space for hours. As a matter of fact, Rez, what happened to you last night? Did you fall asleep in our space that you was in there so long?
No, my phone absolutely died. Just completely shit a brick, and there was nothing I could do about it. At that point, I was looking at the time. I was like, it's late. I'll go to bed. But my phone just completely died.
Okay, so just and Reg, please, I want all of you guys to hear Reg say this, because the last time I said that me and Reg have a healthy respect, I seen a lot of you guys cackling in the comments. Reg, let your whole chat know how we handle our space and if it's a safe space for globe earthers or not, and be honest with them.
Would it be possible that we maybe get back to the main issue and actually?
No. I asked Rez a question. He asked me a couple questions. I answered, and I want him to answer this question live in front of all you globe earthers who's scared to come have conversations.
I'll answer it. I'll answer it, but then we will get back on subject, because I did want to make one other point on top of this, which Astronomy Live will get to later. It's another image that I have that I want Astronomy Live to explain what we are seeing, because this is important. But I will say that if you go to that absolute fuckface known as Nathan Oakley, you're not going to get a word in edgewise at all. That is not the case with the spaces that Sacred hosts. He actually allows people to get a word in edgewise. And for that, yes, I definitely respect him for that. Because if you go to Nathan Oakley's shit show, that's all you're going to get is an absolute fucking shit show. It sometimes turns into a shit show over there, but Sacred does have the fortitude to say, no, we ain't doing that. He mutes everyone at the exact same time and says, let's get back on topic. Let's allow people to space and also get to the hands so that everyone has a chance to speak. So I do respect that about him. And Nathan Oakley, a quick word. You might want to get in contact with Sacred so he can show you how the fuck it's done, you piece of shit. Anyway.
Leave my guy Nathan alone, Reg.
I'm just saying he could learn a thing or two, because God damn, that dude is such a piece of shit. Anyway, there is one other image that I wanted to show. So Astronomy Live, can you please explain what we are seeing here?
Sure. So on, gosh, I'm losing track of the days. Thursday morning. So we had the launch, and then Thursday morning, I got up early. Was it Thursday? Gosh, my days are running together, man. It was, let me see. I've got the one with the timestamp on it over here. Let me get the one with the timestamp up on it, just so I don't screw up my days.
It said 17th on the Twitter feed, so it must have been
17th.
Thursday.
It must have been, yeah, okay, so it was 17th. That's what I thought. That's what I was trying to find, the one with the timestamp on it.
I was about to say, if you wanted to bring up the timestamped one, I could just let you
Yeah.
full screen you.
Yeah, it's in it. I've got it saved in a different directory. Here we go. Let me pull this up.
Because this is something that I also want to bring up, because when I go back into Sacred's space next week on Friday, and I'll post a link out on Twitter so y'all can jump in if you want. But I want Sacred to be able to back up the fact that, yo, we actually showed this shit, and he can say everyone else, or to everyone else when they inevitably call me a liar, that, oh no, they actually have this, and they actually did this shit themselves. With that being said, Astronomy Live, I now full screened you, so please explain what we are seeing.
Okay, so at on the 17th, I got up early. Orion was predicted to be on a trajectory that would allow it to be visible above the horizon briefly around twilight. So I set up the scope in such a way that I could get down as low in the east as possible. I was shooting Orion about 20 degrees above the horizon, which is pretty low for me. On the east, I've got some trees to deal with, despite Hurricane Ian. So got the scope set up, got it over there, and started shooting 30-second exposures at the coordinates that Orion was predicted to be passing through. Then I took each of those exposures. There were 28 exposures, so 30 seconds, so it's 14 minutes of light. And I wrote a program to align them based on the orbit of Orion. So it shifts each photo such that Orion is always over the same pixels if you were to stack them together. And that's why the stars become streaks here. You can see each of those streaks that look like raindrops going through the shot. Those are actually stars as Orion is moving from shot to shot. You can even see a little bit of a gap at the top right of each star that is streaking. That gap is because it took an automatic dark frame after the first exposure. So it did 30 seconds, then it closed the shutter for 30 seconds, took a dark frame to calibrate all the pictures, and then it resumed the shots unbroken for the rest of the time. So once I stacked those pictures, I got a faint dot, which is circled there right where Orion was supposed to be. The circle was not drawn by me. That was drawn automatically by the program based on the predicted coordinates of where Orion should be expected to show up in the image. And that's exactly where it showed up. So that tells me it's exactly on course. Tracking the images based on the orbit of Orion allowed it to show up, and it's exactly at the right coordinates that it's supposed to be at that time.
So basically, Sacred, this is the point I'm trying to make. We have confirmation of liftoff. We have confirmation of booster separation. We have confirmation of the tower being jettisoned. We have confirmation that it orbited the Earth by capturing it an hour, 50 minutes after the fact. And then we have confirmation that it's still in space where it's supposed to be, predicted to be a day later on 11/17. We have basically at this point in time a cumulative case to show that the SLS rocket did what it was supposed to do. Orion is doing what it's supposed to do. All of it is coming together. And this is the part where I ask you, Sacred, what do you think about all this shit? Pretty convincing, huh?
So without a rational mind, I would definitely be fooled into believing all of this shit. No, just get it. No, listen.
Holy fuck.
Yeah, no. Listen. This is what I expect from globe earthers. I expect if this is mainstream fact, I don't want to see no holes in nothing. You know what I'm saying? Because you know how I get, Rez. I will dissect anything. So this is the level of confidence that I expect when globe earthers present certain things, right? Because I mean, still the science does it. We have these discussions all the time, and we're still trying to figure out how propulsion can work in space. So that part of my mind, my rational mind, is just not letting me go all the way to the other side. But if you are going to present an argument, then it should line up exactly the way you have it, Astronomy Live has it, in relationship to what NASA showed on this shit. So I will acknowledge that.
All right. So, but okay, I'm going to ask you to do something just for me do this. Let's just accept for a moment that we know for a fact, without question, that rockets work in the space. Just accept it for the sake of argument. That will be a conversation we can come back to later. But with that no longer being a barrier to entry to this, would you say that our evidence is pretty damn good in showing that the Artemis mission is doing what the NASA mission planners say that it is doing?
I would say without you and Astronomy Live, hell fucking no. But with y'all imagery and with y'all data that you guys caught, y'all did NASA a pretty huge fucking favor. I'm telling y'all right now, because we was gonna rip this shit to shreds.
So it's pretty good. All right. So if that's pretty good, what is the chances? I'm going to ask you that. What are the chances that when we go into your space next week, and I'm explaining all of this to the best of my ability without the nice, pretty pictures I can easily display on screen and the videos and the shit like that, because, you know, it is Twitter. And I assume it's going to get worse now that Elon's running the show, because Jesus fucking Christ. But if I go back into that space and I'm explaining all this and some asshole decides to say that Red's rhetoric is lying or Astronomy Live is lying and everything like that, you're going to be able to speak up and say, I was in his live stream and he was showing all this shit to me, answering all these questions. I can confirm that he is not lying when he says that he has this information, has this data.
Yeah, I don't even know if I ever let anyone call you a liar in my space, to be totally honest, because you get all your own footage. I might have missed it, but I usually try to correct it, no?
I mean, it has happened a few times, is all I'm saying. So
okay. Yeah, no. If anyone tries to say you were lying or faking the footage, I would have to say, listen, look, guys, you're gonna have to really point out where they faked it and what they're lying about. Because this is my problem with a lot of flat earthers, is that they will just jump to that argument of you're lying, right? And I'm the type of person where if I'm gonna call somebody a liar, I'm gonna have some type of substantiation to back that up. And what happens is when certain flat earthers don't have an understanding or an understanding of what's going on, or they're just pulling shit out of anywhere and they're not even trying to find the truth, they're not looking at both sides of the arguments, it discredits people like me or some of the people that come to my space, because we're literally trying to find the truth. So then you get everyone, all the globe earthers, just thinking that all flat earthers are the same. All flat earthers think the same way. No one has any type of evidence. No one has any type of content to provide any type of substantiated argument. And I hate that, because I'm trying to bridge that gap to let people know that it's not just ignorant people that's sharing memes all the time. We're really just trying to find the truth, y'all. All of us came from, hold on, real quick. I just want to say, all of us came from learning about space, rockets, all this stuff. We were all super hyped about this. And just some of the things just didn't line up all the way. So it brought people to the other side. But what happens when you get on the internet, you can get misled, you can get deceived, and then you could just become just ignorant. And then it just kind of destroys the whole truther community. And I know y'all laugh when I say that, but this is what it is. You can't be mad at someone for wanting to know the truth for a fact, knowing that NASA fucks up all the time and knowing how NASA came into origination through Nazis and all type of bullshit. So, and y'all said that they were controlled by, and y'all said that they were controlled by politicians. So that also, you know, is a little bit raised eyebrow. But go ahead, Gio.
Yeah, thank you. You said you weren't all people who were, you know, just sharing memes. You were literally sharing a meme, and we still haven't addressed as to why you did that and what you thought was happening in there. So should we maybe talk about that for a few minutes?
No, I already, was you not listening? So I said whatever the image that Red shared was something that was floating around on Twitter.
Yes,
so what I do whenever,
why did you share it without, you know, asking first?
I'll repeat myself again for you specifically, because I'm pretty sure everybody else heard me say this. When I open these spaces, I don't get engagement from globe earthers to come have a conversation, just like I came here, right? I came here to have a conversation on Red's channel because he come to my space. When I'm trying to get this engagement to find the truth, see, look, I'm not trying to hold spaces just to be talking to flat earthers all day. I don't even really want to talk to flat earthers. I've been studying this stuff and looking at this stuff for years. I want to talk to the globe earthers that got the technology that I don't have, globe earthers that might know something about the globe model that I don't know. So that's who I want to talk to. But when you look in your chat, like Red's chat right now, they're probably all talking shit. If you go on Twitter, they're all talking shit, and they never come grab a mic to come have a conversation. They all call us retards, stupid, dumb, ignorant, but they will never come grab a mic to show us how stupid we are. So the only way to get them to come engage is to share things that trigger them. Then they start engaging. So then I could share the mic, I could share the space, and either they'll grab the mic or they won't. And when they won't, they'll just shut the fuck up and then they'll just leave. And then it'll just be me, Reds, and maybe 2 other globe earthers in my space. But sometimes they'll come and engage because of some of these things that I share. So it's like I have to bait you guys to come have a regular conversation. And it's crazy. So I've already answered that. So did you get me now or no?
Yeah, kind of. But that leads to a follow-up question. Do you understand now, or did you understand before that the meme doesn't make any sense?
Did you go to the tweet? Did you go to the tweet that
I've just seen the one that Red shared earlier?
But did you see the actual tweet itself?
Again, just the one that Red shared earlier.
But did you see the tweet? He showed a picture that when I was here. I don't know if he showed the whole tweet.
He showed a picture of the tweet.
I'm gonna bring it up right now. So I'm going to share it in 3, 2, 1. This is the tweet.
I can see it.
Yep.
Right.
It says the hashtag Flat Earth Fridays and stuff like that. So this was the image that was the quote unquote bait. And I know what this tweet or this image or this meme, whatever the fuck we want to call it, is attempting to illustrate, that because the rocket is quote unquote missing the moon, therefore fake CGI, whatever the fuck else it is. And I guess Sacred is trying to say that he knew that it was going to be triggering, and that's why he posted it. Not
now go to the comments. Click the comments, Rez, and let's see who commenting on there.
So we have Conspiracy Slayer, we have Paranormal Troubleshooter, we have Kev Conrad.
And how many of those people in those comments did grab the mic in the space that night?
I don't think any of them showed up.
I don't care.
And that's my whole point. I can't, and I share my space with all these globe earthers. I'm so glad that Reds was one that finally found my space, because now I could hold them accountable. Like, you guys can't run from the conversation no more if Reds is in the space now. And y'all could see that all of them engage and they don't want to come talk. So this is why I posted, so I could prove, look, you guys can't sit here and act like flat earthers are running no more, because Rez is in the space and you guys are engaging. So you're choosing not to come have the conversation if you're claiming to be so much smarter than everybody else. You're smart and scared. That's not a good combo. So that's the only, to answer your question, this is why I tweet the way I tweet sometimes, to get the engagement, to further the conversation.
Yeah, but that's not really what my question is about. My question is, do you understand why the content of the tweet makes no sense? Why that drawn picture makes no sense? Now that Astronomy Live has explained how the parking orbit works and how the TLI works afterwards, do you understand why that's useless?
Let me rephrase that question just a little. So if I go to my Twitter's, hang on, because what I did is I go to my tweets and replies, because I remember having a conversation with an absolute dumbass called That Guy, and he's been sharing these memes like fucking hot fire. So basically, given everything that we have spoken about today in this stream, would you or would you not agree that this meme or this image is absolutely fucking stupid?
Oh, there's a question to me?
Yeah, would you or would you not agree that given everything that we have talked about today in the stream, that this image is incredibly fucking stupid?
If we're going with the how they say, how mainstream science says they get things into orbit going to the moon, then yeah, of course, because they say it goes around the Earth, it circumnavigates the Earth a couple times, and it does like this figure 8, and then it goes around the moon. Now, anybody could just go ahead and look that up and see how this orbital data or how this orbital tracking actually works. So to that point, I would say you guys are right, obviously. What flat earthers are saying is like, well, how do we know that that's really how it works? You know what I'm saying? And I know you guys would say, you know, well, you guys are just saying whatever the case is, but you know, these are questions just to be asking questions. So if anyone really believes, you know, this type of image right here, that's their own perspective. But if they're just ignorant to how mainstream science says orbital mechanics work and how orbital trajectories work, then yeah, then that's just dumb, because it's like they're telling you that it doesn't work that way. So
All
you
right,
got to
that's
acknowledge
all
that.
that's all I wanted to hear, that you're not one of the super unreasonable ones.
Nah, come on, man. Look, Rest told you already. I'm not here to be pushing a narrative or pushing my view. I'm here to have a conversation because I just want to find the truth. I'm not trusting Nazi scientists. I'm just not doing it.
Yep.
Like, I just can't.
Hang on. Let's and in the spirit of having the conversation, I'm going to stop sharing real quick and
Did you
share
just
this
say-
$20 super chat. And so, Tim, I want to say thank you so much for the $20 super chat. I shall read it. The reason why we give flat earthers crap is because they never give evidence for flat earth. Not once have they even attempted to give measurements of flatness. And
Now, Red,
you want to respond to that?
yeah, hell yeah. See, this is what I'm talking about. Look, we talk about this shit. Y'all seen the screen. It's at episode 25. We've been going for 25 weeks straight. We literally just had our 6-month Flat Earth Friday anniversary last week. Not only that, our Flat Earth Friday stemmed from a Globe Earth Flat Earth debate on Twitter in Spaces. It was like probably like the first one of its kind. And it was an astronomer and a couple couple guys studying science. And then one other astrophysicist was supposed to show up, and then he bailed out on us. And we won that debate. Okay, so we had to literally sit in front of hundreds of people and share our evidence, and they said share their evidence. And I wish I could share the tweet so y'all could see that we literally won. They did a poll on Twitter, and we won. Not only that, the globe earthers never even wanted to talk about gravity calculations. They didn't want to talk about curvature calculations. They were able to go ahead and choose every single topic that we were going to debate over, and we got the topics 24 hours prior to that, right? So, and then we beat them. So this stemmed our Flat Earth Friday. When we have our Flat Earth Fridays, we literally post all of our evidence. We have these discussions every single week. And a lot of the times it just falls on gravity and refraction. We literally see things way too far out. We post this stuff up top because we could do that. It's not as intuitive as StreamYard, but they do have a Jumbotron or a Nest that you could share images and videos and tweets and stuff like that. So we do this all the time. Like Red sees us, we don't just come and just be bullshitting. A lot of the time, I will say though, what we do is we do focus on the globe model to make sure that it's actually fact before we start theorizing about other models. Because that's what a lot of globe earthers like to say, is that flat earthers don't have a model, right? But then we'll point out holes in the globe earth model and then it's just overlooked. So we do a little bit of both. We try to make sure that the mainstream fact is actually matches up with reality. And then we also provide some type of evidence that points to a flat earth. Now, is a flat earth completely understand it? No, not even the globe earth is understanding. Y'all don't even understand dark matter. So we're not even going to go there. I'm so sick of hearing that argument. Let's just look at the evidence and stop pointing out, y'all don't have a functioning model, because globe earthers don't either. A lot of things line up, but it's not a full functional model. So that's the only thing I wanted to say on that. We do provide evidence, we provide content, and we talk about this shit for hours every single Friday.
Well,
stop that nonsense.
This is where I wanted to come in. One of the challenges that I make to flat earthers all the time is to have an actual debate on this, but I do it in a particular way, which is, in order for this debate to happen, we have to start out the debate in a certain way, which is that we start the debate by presenting evidence for the model that we present, not negative evidence against the opposing model. And when I went into the space yesterday, there was some Jeranism ball washer in there, whose name absolutely escapes me because it probably isn't all that important. Probably is in his own mind, but we'll get to that later. But this Jeranism fluffer decided to come into the space and absolutely refuse to have the debate if that was a condition for the debate. He didn't want to actually present evidence for his model. He wanted to simply attack the globe. I think what Tim in this $20 super chat is getting at is that whenever we talk to flat earthers, or whenever we have debates with flat earthers, the default action of flat earthers is to just attack the globe, not to focus on their own model and present evidence for the model they believe in. It's only, well, it can't be a globe because of this. Yeah, well, let's go ahead and say that argument sticks. Just because it's not a globe, that doesn't mean it's flat either. It could be, as you say, a Dorito or a quesadilla or a calzone or whatever the fuck. You know, it could be any number of things.
Or it could be a globe that's just way bigger than what it is. Like, if we're not saying that's not the case, but I mean, that still would throw up all the calculations of gravity and orbital mechanics and everything. So you're gonna have to address that. But we also say it could be just a very, very larger sphere than what it is.
Yeah, but do you see the issue that he's getting at is that whenever we go into like, let's say Tim were to go into the absolute septic tank known as Nathan Oakley's show, the very first thing they're going to do, and in fact, the only thing they're going to do, is attack him and his model. But he'll never, ever get a opportunity to hear their positive evidence for the flat earth. That's what's going to happen, guaranteed, every single time. They will always attack the earth or the round earth, but they'll never promote and prove the flat earth. That's what happens over there. So that's the frustration that is all too common when going into flat earth spaces. And so I guess Tim is wondering, if he were to go into your space and he were to ask a direct question to flat earthers to defend their model by presenting evidence for it, you, Sacred, would hold their feet to the fire, correct?
Shit, I'll tell you myself. If I don't know something about the flat earth, then I'll just tell you. Like, I don't know. I'll look into that. That's a good question. What did the guy come in yesterday, Rez? He was he an astrophysicist? What was he? He was some type of something or whatever. And he was asking about magnetism. He was asking about something about magnetism on a flat earth, right?
I believe so. I know that we said something about magnetism and water and stuff like that.
Yeah, he was saying something about how magnetism doesn't make sense on a flat plane. And then just real quick, I did like a quick little search and I looked up some documents, and it was something from the Army that had something that they were modeling, some dielectric magnetism over a flat plane.
Diamagnetic or something.
Diamagnetic something. So this is basically what I'm saying is, flat earthers have two models to learn at the same time. Not only that, the globe earth model is ever changing, right? So that's just how science works. I'm not saying that you guys are lying about anything. I'm just saying that that's just how science works. It's ever developing. So while we're trying to figure out a model, a theoretical model, including the fact that it doesn't even match up with globe earth. So if you're going to look at a flat earth model, you got to acknowledge the ether, which then changes the whole thing, because we're not taking a flat earth and putting it in a globe model. That is not how it works. The whole thing changes. So if anybody can come up here and tell me what the ether is, scientifically speaking, please do, because I don't even have a full understanding of that. And like I said, the globe model is ever expanding too. Just not even a decade ago, we found out that the moon was within our atmosphere. Now, I wasn't taught that growing up. So like, we're doing two different studies. We're trying to figure out all the peer-reviewed studies from all the scientific community, as well as theorizing what it really could be based off of our observations. So we're really doing double the work. So it is going to be difficult. And if I don't know something, I have no problem saying I don't know about it, because at that point, there's an opportunity for me to learn. And that's how I handle all my conversations.
I need to ask a few questions.
This is why I'll let you talk, Gio, right after this. I just want to say two things. This is why I think choosing words very carefully. What they should have said is, hey, there's a few atoms of from the atmosphere that makes it all the way to the moon, not like the atmosphere as we consider it in our heads is literally stretching all the way out to the moon. It's that atoms coming from the atmosphere go out that far. That probably is the way they should have said it. That would have avoided a lot of confusion, whatever. But I did want to read this comment from Sophie Chan. Thank you very much, Sophie. One, there is no FE model, and two, it is not ever no, it's not ever changing. So that.
Yeah, I
It
gotta.
literally does. See, this is my problem. Why nobody can acknowledge this? The globe Earth model wasn't the same way that it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
Stop at this point. Stop. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I really need to stop you because you're going the wrong way. She's right. The globe model is not really ever changing, but you're not right either. What it is zeroing in on something. We're refining parameters. We know how it behaves. Our measurements just get more and more accurate over time. Now, if you want to talk dark matter, for example, that has nothing to do with the Earth being a globe, right? And if you're making the argument there that there's something wrong with our physics, fine. But again, nothing to do with the globe.
It's part of the
Basically,
model. Like, how can it not have anything to do with the globe? Like, the model is the model itself. You can't just say the model works up until a certain point, and then beyond that, we can't really explain.
All right.
It's all one model.
I gotta jump in here real quick because I gotta get off here. Apologies,
okay,
but I just want, as I leave, I just want to say it, and I agree with Gio on this. Like, it sounds to me, sacred, like you're putting all the elements of science in the globe Earth model, as if globe Earth model means anything to do with science. And I would say it doesn't. You're generalizing a very specific part of science and saying that if we find out anything about cosmology, about distant galaxies, that means that's changing the globe Earth model. I would disagree with you in the definition of that term globe Earth model, and I think that's where the disagreement's coming into play.
Well, I'm just real quick. I'm only using that term because that's just the only way to describe it. But one of our first splatter spaces, we had a peer-reviewed astrophysicist come into the space, and I asked him about the globe Earth model, and he said, "Hey, Sacred, what is that? There is no such thing as a globe Earth model. In fact, there's no such thing as a fact. Everything is a theory." This is what an astrophysicist told me, and I'm just saying that's the only reason why. No, I'm telling you what an astrophysicist told me, man. I'm not saying that this is what I'm saying. I'm telling you what a peer-reviewed astrophysicist came into our space and said. That's all. And if you don't believe me, I could go ahead and look it up on Twitter because all the spaces are recorded. So you got to give me a couple of days, but I could literally just go look this shit up and I could show y'all what the astrophysicist said. So this is why I like having these conversations, because some of you globe earthers who are not on that level don't even know what astrophysicists believe on that level. So it's just like, it's funny to hear everyone defend it, and then someone who's teaching it says, I don't even know what the fuck that means. Like,
first of all, please, yes, do me a favor, cite him, send me a Twitter message or something where you quote the astrophysics that you claim you have.
I'll do this, Sacred. If you find it, send it to me in a DM, and I'll post it so that all of my followers can see it as well. I did want to tell everyone else to shut the fuck up for a second while Astronomy Life finishes his thought. Go.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to have some parting thoughts here and just say thank you, Reds, for having me on. Thank you, everyone, for your kind words about my footage and my pictures. Appreciate it. And so I'm just going to do a quick plug here for my channel. So if you haven't already, please come over to Astronomy Live and subscribe. And if you have a telescope, especially a Celestron Nexstar or something that can use my software, if you join my channel, you'll get instant access to all my compiled executables. And thank you to all my supporters who make it possible for me to do what I do. Oh, looks like Sacred just dropped.
He'll probably be back, but
okay. But yeah, so thank you, everybody. And so I'm going to continue editing my footage, and I hope sometime this weekend, I swear I'm going to get it done eventually. I'll have the final video of the launch, and I'm putting all the goodies in that video, not just the launch itself, but also the follow-up images of Orion just after TLI, as well as Orion in deep space. And I had a comment while we were out actually on the stream from somebody saying, don't call it deep space. It's just the moon. It's close by. Like, okay, when I say deep space, I mean that in the historical spaceflight, human spaceflight community way that we use the term, meaning anything below the Earth orbit is considered deep space as far as human rated vehicles go. But anyway, that's that. And thank you all for having me on. And Red, just let me know if you need any other details from my footage that you want to share with Sacred. Appreciate it.
All right, peace out.
Yeah, thanks, Astronomy. I'm gonna tap into your channel. Oh, he left already. I haven't really looked at any of his stuff, but I'm gonna tap into his channel.
I'll send it to you. Sacred, how this? Let me explain it to you this way. Back in the day, I'm talking way back in the day, people didn't know all that many digits for pi. But if you wanted to lay down like some like circular patterns for some floor tile or whatever, the number of digits for pi that they actually had was good enough for the job. Nowadays, we can compute pi to an infinite number of digits. I actually think that I don't know where I heard this, but I think if you calculate pi to like what was it, 20 or 21 decimal places, you can literally figure out the circumference of the visible universe down to within the diameter of a proton or something like that. So you won't need any greater accuracy than that. But we have calculated pi to much greater accuracy. Millions and millions and millions of decimal places. Even though the value of pi in totality has quote unquote changed, we can honestly say that no, actually pi was, I mean, we knew pi back then and we know pi now is just to a greater degree. That doesn't mean that the pi value that we knew in the past was wrong. We're just zeroing in on the quote unquote actual answer. And the same is true for the round Earth. We knew that the Earth was a globe. We knew it good enough to do like, navigation and shit where you can take flights and for a fact you're going to make it to the runway. And just refining that model doesn't mean that our current understanding is incorrect. Refinement doesn't mean we abandon what we already know. So it's not, when you say that it's changed, I think that's the wrong word to use. It's being refined. I think that's a better word to use.
I would agree in more recent years, you could say that. But if you're looking at the totality over since from Copernicus to now, like it has literally changed. I mean, they were using scientific equations or whatever the fuck they were doing back in the day to try to figure out how far the sun was. And it goes up to 3 million, it drops down to 1 million, goes up to 100 million, it drops back down to 90. So it's just like, this is what I'm talking about. That's just a small, like, cherry picking portion of what I'm talking about, and I can't really think of anything right now. I know you're about to end the stream. We talk about this all the time. Like, yeah, there is refinement in the technology. If a technology comes out, you should have more accurate predictions when you're using the technology. So I'm not saying that. I'm just saying when you're applying the science and you're coming up with completely different models or completely different figures, and you guys, oh, this is different now. This has changed here. We didn't notice back then. It's just like, all right, if this is not something that is completely standard all the time, and there may have been a mistake a decade or two ago, or whatever the case is, or a few years for something, or whatever the case is, then stop holding us accountable when we don't have the same resources that these corporations or these private organizations have to find out what the model is. Let us do what we want to do. Give us some time, give us the same resources, and we may be able to have some answers. You know what I'm saying? Don't restrict us from traveling to Antarctica. Stop, don't hold us accountable because we're not getting enough resources that NASA gets all the time. Like, that's just not a valid argument. But the last thing I will
sorry,
say,
but I need to stop. I need to interrupt you again.
Real quick. But the last thing I'll say, I did tell, because I thought that's what we're gonna do today. They were gonna be that debate from the dude from last night, and I did tell him, like, Reg is being fair. He's saying, like, if you're gonna debate him, then he's giving you access or allowing you a segment to disprove the globe, but you do have to provide some information about the flat Earth. And I did acknowledge that, and I said, if you're gonna do that, that is fair. And then I don't know, the conversation just kind of like went somewhere else. So I was ready for that debate, and I agree with Rez that it should be two segments where you supposed to defend the model but still provide evidence for it.
Oh yeah, by the way, Gio, go ahead.
Yeah, there's a few issues that I have with your entire points made in the last time, because I still don't think that we have discussed any like physical facts yet. And you seem to every now and then, even you don't accuse us of lying, to throw in these conspiracy theories. You talked about Nazi scientists earlier, at least in a comment, if I understood that correctly. You talked about rockets not working in a vacuum, which, if you don't accuse us of lying, is kind of hypocritical, right? Because that's established science that obviously they work in a vacuum, right? You have the oxidant and you have your fuel.
No, you may just have a different perspective. You may truly believe that it works. That doesn't mean that you're lying. Lying is something like, yeah, I know that this is not true, but I'm still pushing that rhetoric. So that's not what I'm saying.
I mean, we know for a fact that rockets work in a vacuum.
That's your belief, right? So I'm just saying,
that's not. I'm literally a chemist. I know how this reaction works.
What I'm saying is, I'm not calling you a liar if you truly believe that. What a liar is someone who knows that's not true and still pushing the rhetoric. That's the only distinction that I'm making.
Okay, then let me ask you this: do you think that rockets don't work in a vacuum?
That's a loaded question, because if you're talking about space, a vacuum has to mimic the environment of space.
Zero bars.
Space is not just a vacuum, right? So you could create a vacuum, but it won't simulate space. You have to literally make we talked about this for a couple weeks too, Rez. You literally got to make adjustments to the vacuum so that way we can try our hardest to simulate space. And it still can't even really be simulated if you believe in gravity, because we can't take gravity away in a vacuum.
Is not.
Hang on, guys. Hang on,
I'm
both of
talking
you.
about a vacuum, not a gravity.
Hang on. Geo, when I say shut the fuck up, you shut the fuck up. I have to acknowledge a super chat real quick, and then I'll let you finish. It's he's kind of throwing some shade here, but that's all right. RT96 $5 says no one is stopping flat earthers from finishing high school.
But it's the astrophysicists that say, I don't even know what the fuck y'all talking about. So that's funny, RT. But I appreciate you putting some money in Red's pockets.
Yeah, I'm gonna get a whole what was it, $3 something after YouTube takes their angel share. Anyway, Geo, continue.
What the fuck?
Yeah, where was I? Hang on. Yeah, first of all, a vacuum is obviously not the same as a gravity-free environment. Do you agree? And that's a yes or no question.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. We know that we can run rocket engines on Earth in vacuum chambers. Actually, there was a video of an amateur having done that very recently. His name is Slice Barcane. Ah, yes, we got the super chat.
Yep,
you might want to check that one out.
To Tim Pryor, thank you very much. Slice Barcane has a video that he just put out showing it working in a vacuum. Geo, please comment on that.
So basically, he had a small vacuum chamber where he lighted a small, rocket engine, kind of a model thingy. But that's basically what I want to say is we know from experimentation that rocket engines work in a vacuum, right? Do you have any indication that they don't?
Yeah, my logical and rational mind. Now, Rez did bring up
Stop, that's not evidence.
Video.
That's not a hard piece of
data. Hold on, bro. See, now just look. I didn't interrupt him, right? Now, one time did I interrupt anybody else? So y'all stop talking about flat earth. This is the one that disrupting the conversation, because clearly a lot of other people be getting excited. What Rez brought up yesterday in the spaces, that Sly did drop a video. I didn't get to see it because I think he just dropped it like 1 or 2 days ago, right?
Yeah,
sounds about
yesterday,
right.
Day before yesterday, somewhere around there.
Yeah. Now, but somebody in the space did say that he watched it. I didn't get a chance to watch it yet, so I got to go look to see exactly how the experiment was set up. But the one of the flat earthers in the space said he did watch it, and it seemed like there was an atmosphere that was created inside of the vacuum. So I don't know if that's all the way true. I'm just saying what he repeated. I got to go watch the video myself. So if there was an atmosphere that was created inside the vacuum after whatever energy or atoms or molecules was released in there, then it's no longer a vacuum. That's his point. I don't know if that's to be true. I'm just repeating what he said. I got to watch it myself.
So I did want to make a mention of that video. I'm going to hide this. Okay, I'm going to actually get that video up on the screen real quick. Because this is actually along the conversation topic that is the whole reason for this show, which is Artemis, the rocket launch, and whether or not we are presenting enough evidence or showing enough evidence to confirm that it is actually doing what the fuck it is doing. So I think we have firmly established that 1, a rocket did lift off. 2, it went through the staging that it was supposed to do, despite the fact that NASA's live stream of it was absolute dog shit. We confirmed that it was in orbit an hour and 50 minutes after the fact, and we confirmed that it was still doing what it was supposed to be doing a day after the fact. Now the only question that's left is, do rockets work in a vacuum? So this is along the topic of this show. So I'm going to bring up Sly Sparkane's video, and we will watch it together.
Yeah, Reds. While you're bringing that up, I would like to ask Sacred again, because I don't think I got a satisfactory answer.
No, that's fine.
Because you said, Sacred, that your evidence for rockets not working in space was a rational mind. That's not evidence, that's an opinion. Do you have any hard experimental data that would point to that fact?
No, I don't. And I can say the same thing about you. You don't have any hard evidence that anything is in space either. So again, that's a bad argument, bro. Like
that's not the same thing. Rocket engines not working in space is not the same thing as something not being in space. And yes, we do have evidence that shows it. We have, for example, Red's footage from the rocket launches, where, as you see the rockets leaving the atmosphere, you can see the plumes of the exhaust gases getting wider, showing that there's no more air resistance, ergo them being in a vacuum. Please don't even pretend that our positions are identical, because it's not the case.
No, it's not a pretend. What you're doing is making an observation. You are not out there and actually seeing a rocket in space. You're taking an image from the surface. Now, I'm not saying it's not far above the surface of the Earth, but I don't know if it's in actual orbit. I don't know if it's in space. I don't know exactly where it's at. We only have limited amount of technology with the scopes that you guys are using as amateurs. The only one that can really verify that is like the big ass corporation and the big ass space agencies. Like, we can't do that. So you'd still be getting it.
Apart from the fact that you're wrong, because, for example, our dear friend Retzi has triangulated the space station. We know at which altitude it is. We know at which speed it's moving, which, if it was still in the atmosphere, would basically burn the fuck up from what's it called, wind resistance, basically.
Friction.
Friction. Thank you very much. So yes, we do that they're in a vacuum, well, for all intents and purposes, perfect vacuum. We do know the fact that we can still do boosts up there. You know that the ISS needs to be boosted up every now and then, because it still, suffers from a little bit of friction. And we do know that these rocket engines, they just work independently on whether there's a vacuum or not. So my question again, you said that you didn't have any evidence of them not working. The only thing you can say is, whatever we give you as pieces of data, you will just claim that they're not good enough, right? And I think that's
no. I've never
please
claimed
do not
it's not
interrupt
good
me.
enough.
Please, yeah, you just said it literally. You said that our observations were limited because we were observing something from the surface. That's saying that whatever data we give you is not good enough. And please don't interrupt me. I'm trying to give you the same courtesy.
I'm gonna go ahead and interrupt both of y'all so that we can take a look at this. So I want to point something out on this screen. So this right here is obviously the gauge that's going to measure the atmospheric pressure that's within. I don't know in what units it is, but it really doesn't fucking matter. Anyway, a full gauge means atmospheric pressure is within this cylinder right here. So as he vacuums out the air, you can see the gauge indicating that there is indeed a vacuum. So where it started was way the fuck over here, and where it ended up was way the fuck over here. So we're going to see this rocket motor fire, and when it does, look at the gauge. As you can see, it goes up just a little bit, but then it goes right back down again. Now that little bit of movement is still far, far, far below atmospheric pressure. And the reason why I was going back down is because the pump was never turned off. It was continuously pumping. And so what's happening here is that he's going to let the air back in, open up that valve, the air goes back in. That's atmospheric pressure. And now he's able to remove the lid. So that is the observation. Just to bring it back here one more time, Now, watch what happens when it just fires and look at the delay between it firing and this gauge moving. You can see that? So there was a bit of a delay, which means that a little bit of gas was able to seep in before this thing fired, but the gauge did not move all that much. This means that even though there was a pretty damn good vacuum in this chamber, this rocket attached to a recycled fidget spinner, awesome, by the way, it was still able to spin the fuck up, showing that yes, rockets do indeed work in a vacuum. Sacred, would you like to say anything about it?
Yeah, so I still want to watch the video in its full capacity, just so I can have a full comprehension. But why when the vacuum fills up with these molecules of particles, whatever is being released from the energy, why is all of that energy not simultaneously being removed from the vacuum to simulate space?
Well, first of all, it's important to point out that that white smoke that you can see there is probably not gaseous. Whenever you have something that looks like this white kind of powderous material, that's not gases, so that won't actually produce any pressure. That's basically just fine dust, which is somewhat what you expect depending on what rocket fuel they're using.
Yeah, this
Right?
is
So that's not the
solid
point.
fuel. Exactly. This
Yep.
What you're seeing here is actually not a gas. It's actually very, very, very fine powder. And sorry, I clicked the wrong thing there. And just to kind of illustrate this, if we go to my video, let's go back. If we go to my video of the Artemis launch and go back to the boosters, you can actually see here's the lighter weight stuff getting blown back. This is kind of more gaseous material, but then you see all the solid stuff sparking out of the bottom. It's not moving in the same exact way as the more gassy stuff right here. So this is the solid fuel. What you're seeing with that powder in Slice Barkane's video is just a smaller version of these chunks, much smaller version of these chunks.
But there's a container, right? So that changes everything. So in order to make sure that the container, is not affecting the experiment, in my opinion, and maybe you guys can correct me, or maybe I should just ask you like this. Do you guys believe if, and maybe there is here, maybe I'm not noticing it, but do you guys believe if Sly had a valve that simultaneously removed all matter, all particles, whatever the fuck from this vacuum, removed it simultaneously when it was introduced to the environment, if he removed that, do you think that that would be a better, more accurate experiment?
If you're saying that that he should get a bigger vacuum chamber with a bigger pump and a bit bigger gas flow rate, whether that would clear up the situation a bit more, yes, obviously.
No, not bigger. Because I don't know if this is what's actually happening. I'm getting like a small sample size with the whole video. I gotta watch it and actually listen to how he's explaining it. But what I'm saying is, if we're gonna make sure that this propulsion is not bouncing off of matter, that's bouncing off of a container, in order to remove that variable, it would make sense to remove anything that's introduced to the environment simultaneously from the vacuum. You don't need a bigger one. You just need a valve to when that those particles that you guys are saying is not gas. If we could remove that from the environment at the same time that it's introduced, that would most likely simulate space more than keeping all of these particles within this vacuum that's bouncing off of the container that could be affecting the propulsion experiment.
So first of all, let's clear up a few things. There's not only solids in there, not only that smoke. There's gonna be gas that's formed, depending on what fuel it's using. It's either carbon dioxide or dinitrogen gas or something like nitrous.
Yes,
but
correct.
There is
still gases. Yes, correct. There is still gases that are being produced, but it's not enough to make a meaningful amount of pressure.
Second of all,
it's an opinion.
Second of all, your point about the vacuum basically being holden better when you have a bigger valve basically to pull all the gas out with a better pump. that would also work if you had a better vacuum chamber, right? Because the same amount of molecules of gas will spread out over a bigger volume, thereby not causing a significant pressure change.
So you're acknowledging that there is a pressure change. It's not significant, but there is a
Yes.
pressure change.
Yes.
So is that simulating space?
To a certain degree, yes.
Here we go with these little pre-words.
Stop,
It's either
stop,
yes or
stop,
no.
stop.
No, Sacred is not. He's doing his best to simulate space, but it's not accurate. That's what would be an acceptable answer.
Do you have any indication that the acceleration of the rocket motor is different from running it like 1 atmosphere?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. What would you say?
Okay, so if you're saying that rocket engines aren't working in space, that would mean that at 0 bars, you would see no acceleration whatsoever behind the rocket engine if you fire it. And, you know, at like 1 atmosphere, so like a pressure at sea level, you would see a certain value, and then you would have a gradient between those two, where the further you go up in the atmosphere, meaning that the lower the pressure gets, the weaker the acceleration would get of the rocket engine. Do you have any, you know, indication that that's the case, not only in this experiment, but in any other one? You can take your pick there.
Still don't know if I fully understand, but no, I mean, this is the first time I'm seeing anyone performing an experiment like this.
Let's go through this step by step. Let's assume for a fact that rocket engines don't work in a vacuum. Okay.
All right.
Right. That would mean that if you fire a rocket engine in a vacuum, you don't get any acceleration from it whatsoever. Agreed?
Okay.
Okay. Now, if you fire a rocket engine at 1 bar, meaning at the pressure at sea level, obviously they work. We know even you would accept that that's a fact, right?
Yep. Within our environment. Yeah.
Right. So there must be some sort of gradient between those two extremes. So, for example, if you had like 500 millibars, like half an atmosphere, you would see an acceleration value that was somewhere between the one you see at sea level and 0, right?
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Do you have any indication for that being the case?
Within this experiment or just in general?
No, in general.
If I have any indication that there's any acceleration happening?
No, if there's a change in that acceleration depending on the pressure environment.
Basically, do you have anything to show that as atmospheric pressure decreases, the amount of thrust produces also decreases?
Oh, no. Okay. Okay. I see what you're saying. Wow, you could have just said that. No. So I do think that because there is positive pressure in our atmosphere, that will create thrust.
No, no. My position is, if somebody thinks that the rocket engine does not work in a vacuum, that would mean that there's no acceleration in a vacuum, but there would be some acceleration value in the atmosphere, right? So you would expect a dependency of the surrounding pressure. A dependency of the acceleration depending on the surrounding pressure. Correct? Sacred, you're muted.
Hey, Gio, everything still good?
For my end is fine. I just can't hear Sacred.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, maybe StreamYard's decided to take a shit real quick. So
and he dropped.
Yeah, so it was a connection issue.
Well, then let's just give him a minute or two to rejoin.
I also when he does come back, just so that I'm gonna go ahead and point this out. I have my video of the Atlas stream up ready to show, because I also want to show what you brought up, Gio, which was the gases expanding as altitude increases. I also wanted to make an entirely separate point with that as well, but that's going to be for later on. Yeah. But to kind of illustrate one other point with what you were trying to say is that You are right. If what he is saying is true, then we should see some sort of variability in the rocket's performance given the atmospheric pressure that we have.
Yes, one important thing that needs to be pointed out there is obviously we need to calculate out atmospheric drag, but that's easy.
Yes. So, Sacred, now that you're back, let's get a mic check from you real quick.
Yeah, my bad, my bad. I couldn't really hear. It's like breaking up, and then I kind of heard you guys say you couldn't hear me, so I was like, let me just reset this real quick.
Got it. I'm going to go ahead and share a video. Hopefully this will help. I did mention this video in your space, Sacred. So let's go ahead and take a look-see.
Before you showed, Sacred, can you attempt to answer the question that I asked? Just to make sure that you understand actually what my question is. Could you please repeat it maybe and then answer?
Or I could repeat it.
Yeah. Let me hear Rez repeat it, because
No. I would like you to repeat it, please, so that I understand that you get, or that I can make sure that you understand my question.
I'm not getting what you're asking, and maybe it's a little bit above my head, and I have no problem saying that because I'm not a professional in science by any means. I'm teaching all of this myself. I do my own studies. So if you're talking about something specifically about an acceleration metric that it may not be clicking, I'll have to do some research on what you're talking about. But it sounds like you're referring to it should be some difference in acceleration due to the pressure from on the surface and in the air. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so let me try to rephrase this again. So again, let's just assume that rocket engines don't work in a vacuum, right? Which means that you could fire a rocket engine in a vacuum, but nothing would happen. Correct? There would be no acceleration whatsoever.
Yeah, it would just stay pretty much still.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Now, if you do the same experiment, the same rocket engine at like in the atmosphere, you will get a certain acceleration value, right? Depending on how strong the rocket motor is.
Okay.
Okay, so that would mean that we would expect a sort of gradient, right? Where the higher the atmospheric pressure around it, or the lower it is, the higher or the lower the acceleration would be.
But isn't that what you guys say is what happens with the rockets? Is that when there's less atmospheric friction, that the rockets work better?
Yeah, but friction is not the same as pressure. Friction is because the rocket is actually moving through the, through the atmosphere. But if you kind of clamped it down, if you tethered it to the surface, for example, obviously the rocket would not, move, but you could still measure the force that the engine itself would output.
I actually have an idea. Sacred, let's put it like this. Let's say I got back in contact with Sly Sparkane, since we now know he actually has a vacuum chamber that's actually worth a shit.
Worth a shit. I'd be careful. The vacuums I work with at work are like by a factor of 1,000 better.
I can imagine, but let's work with what we got. So how about this, Sacred? He does 2 tests. He does one firing of a rocket in that chamber, but with atmospheric pressure, so no vacuum whatsoever, and records what happens. Then he does it again, this time with a vacuum, and records what happens. And then you compare the footage side by side. If you see the rotational speed is the same between both of those tests, would that not indicate that the atmospheric pressure was ultimately irrelevant, since that was the only variable we actually changed?
Let me think about that, because I'm still stuck on the fact that there's an atmosphere being created.
Yeah, but it's obviously much lower. So we would expect that if there is any atmosphere being quote unquote created, that it's so low that it should inhibit the performance of that rocket in some way, shape, or form. But if we see no change in its rotational velocity between the 2 tests, even though one of them has much more atmospheric pressure compared to the vacuum side of things, that would mean that atmospheric pressure was ultimately irrelevant, correct?
I don't know. I just feel like there's some other variable that we're not taking into account if that's
Do you have
that's
any
still
indication
happening.
for that?
Only
Any
because
indication?
because there's a container that, like I said, look, the only way that this is rationally going to work in my mind is if there is nothing in that vacuum that can affect the experiment. Like nothing. I want to see a valve releasing anything that's introduced to the environment. And I think my mind is not letting me go anywhere else from that, because that's the only way that it will literally make sense. If you guys can show me that you could remove anything that's introduced to the vacuum simultaneously, and then you still see some movement due to the thrust, then I would have to sit here and say, you know, you guys might have this one. I can't use that anymore.
Okay, but what pressure limit would you accept for a vacuum? Just give me a
Zero.
number.
Zero. I don't want
Zero
any
is
pressure in
literally,
there.
sorry, zero is literally impossible. Even in space, you don't have zero vacuum.
Well, see, again, I don't know how you can verify that. That's just what they're telling us, right? But what I'm saying is that
That's super
you can
easy
literally,
because gases like hydrogen and helium actually escape our atmosphere because they're not gravitationally bound. So yeah, they are floating around in space. It's a low pressure, but it's technically not zero.
Technically not,
okay.
not zero, but that's we're basically saying a difference in atmospheric pressure is going to result in a difference of rocket performance. That's the hypothesis that we're building right here. To test that hypothesis, we're going to put two identical rocket motors in a chamber, one with atmospheric pressure and one with very, very, very low atmospheric pressure, for all intents and purposes, a vacuum. And if we observe that there is actually no difference between the two, and given the fact that the only difference between two was the pressure within that container, that would mean that the atmospheric pressure was ultimately irrelevant. It did nothing to inhibit or change the performance of that motor. Wouldn't that be an obvious conclusion to come to if we were to repeat this observation?
Maybe I would like to see it like literally laid out so I can wrap my whole rational mind around the experiments.
I'll tell you what, I'll
Because
get in contact with Sly Sparkane and I'm going to ask him politely to repeat this video, because I don't think in this video he actually fired the rocket with atmospheric pressure. So I want to go ahead and have him redo the video, redo the observation, do one with atmospheric pressure with the same exact setup, and one without or as little atmospheric pressure as he can fucking do within the same setup. Do all that, all things being equal, except for the pressure. That should tell us at least if there is any change to the rocket performance. I'll do that and I'll get back to you. I do want to brute force move on to the next thing though, and that is this video right here, which I mentioned. To kind of illustrate what's going on here, this video is of an Atlas V 551. So here you can see the launch of the rocket. This is my own personal footage. You can see my logo. This is my channel, blah, blah, blah. And I think this is a really awesome fucking video. But anyway, as the rocket is getting higher and higher, you'll notice that the sky is still black, but eventually the plume being left behind gets illuminated. That's because it's high enough to see over the curve and see the sun. So it's actually shining in the sun. But obviously the sun's still over the horizon relative to me on the ground, so therefore it's nighttime, but there you go. But notice what's happening with the gases that are being expelled from this rocket. They're forming a more or less a line. Now, as the rocket is gaining altitude, you'll notice that the gases start to expand. So they're expanding more. Now they're expanding more. Now they're expanding more. And now they have expanded so much right here that you can't even see the gases anymore. And see that is an engine. Actually, I think that may be a little bit too further. There you go. Here. Now they've expanded so much that you can barely see the gases. There's main engine cutoff right there. So we're literally seeing atmospheric pressure change with this rocket in real time as it goes along its flight. This is showing that not only is the rocket quote unquote it's not falling down as flat earthers will claim, because it looks like it's going down. That's just from our perspective what it looks like. It is indeed gaining altitude. We can see that being illustrated by the gases themselves. But we're also seeing that this rocket is still able to gain altitude even though it's going into vacuum. The atmospheric pressure is dropping like a rock, yet it's still working. This shows that a rocket is going into the vacuum of space. And also notice that the rocket's not exploding by hitting a dome. So, Sacred? I mean, you have to admit this is pretty compelling footage, wouldn't you say?
Oh no, can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can.
Okay, my bad. Yeah. So yeah, no, the footage looks great. It's just, is it within our within the dome of the flat Earth, or is it outside of the dome? Because if it's within it, it still has positive pressure. That's just what it is. If there's a
But
container.
do you agree that it's much less positive pressure than at ground level?
Yeah, no, there's definitely there's definitely a gradient that we observe, right? We
Okay.
spoke about this. So there is more positive pressure at the surface than there is up higher.
Do you are you aware of the barometric height formula?
No, not off the top of my head.
Okay, so basically it's an equation that tells you if you're at a certain at a value x above sea level, then the pressure will be that and that high, right? And the higher you go, if you walk up a mountain, the lower the pressure gets, right?
Yeah.
So for example, on Mount Everest, for example, we only have about 1/3 of the same pressure at sea level, about 350 millibars, I think. You're aware of that, right?
Okay.
Okay, so these rockets are way, way higher. Reds, what altitude do you estimate this one to be approximately?
I actually have Houseways launched that has it listed, so I'll pull up that one. So give me a moment.
All right, that's perfect. Because it comes back to the question is how low do you want to see the pressure to accept an experiment like this? And the fact that you said literally 0 kind of points at the fact that you're kind of ignorant on the science behind this and the science as to how pumps and pressure setups work. But that's obviously something.
I hear what they tell us. It just, for me, it doesn't make sense, because if it's ever expanding space, right? If there's ever expanding space, there's
First of all, stop. That's not what quote they tell us. That's in this case literally what I tell you, because I work with vacuum systems. Just for the people who are watching this and for you as well. So I work with chemicals that are very very sensitive to air, which means I need to work with them under inert gases. And in order to use my equipment, I need to remove all the air from it first. So I hook it up to a vacuum pump, a strong vacuum pump, try to pull out as much air as possible, and then refill it with an inert gas. And then repeat that cycle a few times to make sure there's no more oxygen left. The pressure setups that I work with go down to about 10 to the -7 bars. So if you think of this volume that I work with, if you think about 10 million atoms or molecules being in there, after one vacuum cycle, there will be only one left, right? So I'm 99.99999% all the way to a perfect vacuum.
I have here, so this particular plume was at an altitude of 67 miles, which is 107 kilometers.
Okay, so 107 kilometers. That is way higher than the Armstrong limit, isn't it?
Space is considered 100 kilometers, if I remember correctly. So this is 7 kilometers into what is considered space. And as you can see, the gases have expanded very, very wide that you can easily see through them.
All right, so should we maybe plug it into the barometric height formula and see what pressure we expect?
By all means, go ahead and while you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and just say this kind of thing. When we are observing these rocket launches, it is technically us being able to do an experiment, even though that's not the purpose. That's a healthy side effect of these rocket launches. We're able to see the change in atmospheric pressure. We're able to confirm that the rocket is indeed continuously gaining altitude. And we're able to see all that it is going into a vacuum, which is exactly what we would expect to see given everything that the nameless, faceless, they tell us. So with all of this coming together, I mean, we have the launch of Artemis. We have confirmation of it in orbit. We have confirmation of it going on its way to the moon a day later. We have measured the altitude, size, and speed of the International Space Station, showing it's at orbital velocity. We show that the atmosphere can change in atmospheric pressure by a metric fuck ton. Damn it, and he dropped. Fuck.
So I currently don't have my calculator with me, but I'll just try to put it in.
I'm going to wait for him to come back. While he's out there, I'm going to go ahead and read a super chat For $10, we have Tim Pryor again. Thank you very much, Tim. I really, really do appreciate it. See, this is why we get flat Earth or scrap. I think he meant to say give flat Earth scrap. Sacred's back. Okay, welcome back, Sacred. I'm going to go ahead and read this super chat. I know you want to respond to it, but let me just read this, get to my thing, and then we can respond to it after the fact. I promise I'll give you that opportunity. But Tim Pryor said for $10, see, this is why we give flat earthers crap. They believe in a dome with never seeing it, but try to come up with every excuse when shown they're wrong. Literally has been shown rockets work. That is the super chat. With that, I want to finish off what I was saying, which is, you know, we showed Artemis launching. We showed that the staging happened in the way that NASA claimed. We showed the spacecraft in orbit an hour and 50 minutes after the fact. We've shown it on its way to the moon a full day after the fact, thanks to Astronomy Live's telescope. We measured the altitude, size, and speed of the space station, showing that objects are in fact in orbit and traveling at orbital velocity, which if they were in atmosphere, they would burn the fuck up. And while we may have to repeat the observation or the experiment, we have a pretty good indication that rockets do still work in space. I would argue, and I would present to you, Sacred, that in this stream, we have presented to you a cumulative case to show that rockets do work in space. NASA is doing what they say that they're doing while they're up there, and there is no rational reason to believe that they're faking this shit, given what we have been able to independently confirm away from NASA. So you can respond to that and also the super chat if you so wish.
So first, I'll respond to the super chat real quick. So I have never physically gone out and tried to figure. I don't even know how I would figure out if there was a dome or not. Right? There's just certain indicators that kind of point to that. I did, however, see someone post a video, and this is what they did. I'm just gonna say what they captured, because when you say with never seeing it, what's going to be acceptable, right? So someone had some type of scope or camera, whatever the case is, and what they did was they zoomed up on a planet or a star or whatever the case is. I forgot exactly what it was. I'll probably be able to get a video for next Flat Earth Friday. I got to go back and look at my saved videos. But they zoomed in on like a planet or a star, and they didn't adjust their focus, right? I will say that. And then they just panned over to space or to the dark sky. And then they kept on zooming and zooming in, and they were able to capture a square-like texture. Now, I am not a photographer, professional. That's kind of like Red's lane. Maybe there is an explanation for that. But if that was provided, where someone did something like that, which doesn't really sound scientific, I'm going to say that. But if I say that someone literally pointed their camera at a luminary, panned over to space, and kept zooming in, and then captured a texture in the sky, whatever high-powered equipment that they were using, would that be acceptable as seeing, quote unquote, a dome? Or would y'all just
those are pixels. Those are compression artifacts for I can actually repeat that in my house. If I'm inside my house and I have no lights on and I were to record, like, I don't know, the ceiling, I'm going to see that texture, especially if I go into digital zoom. See, there's two different zooms with a Nikon P1000. I'm going
optical and digital, right?
I'm going to assume that that's what was used in this, let's call it an observation or an experiment or whatever. You can do optical zoom, and then you can do digital zoom. By using digital zoom, you're actually going to be zooming in on the image sensor. It's not anything optical, and thus you're going to be susceptible to image artifacting, and that will have a square texture. That I can almost guarantee that is what was being observed.
And this is why I appreciate these type of discussions, because, you know, I'm taking Red's word for it, because he doesn't come off as a liar. But again, this is why, you know, I have these discussions, because someone might point something out that may be able to be recreatable that I have just not have done. But again, that if Reg can't recreate that, even though he says he can, let's just say for instance he can't recreate that, would that be acceptable, or would y'all just ignore that?
Sorry to interrupt, but I just looked it up. So at a height of 70 kilometers over the surface of over sea level, and Reds, that's 230,000 feet for the American people here. You only expect a pressure of about 4 pascals. For comparison, at sea level, it's about 100,000 pascals. So only 0.004% of the atmosphere is left at the level of the rocket.
Holy
Worst case
shit.
scenario.
Holy fuck, that's wow.
That's way better than Sly's vacuum chamber by a factor of at least 100.
So looking at actual rockets in reality, they're operating in a vacuum that is a harder vacuum than what Slice Arcane is able to replicate. Although I will say that that's still not going to change our original hypothesis, which is the hypothesis we're going to test, which is if we were to record 2 different tests, one with a vacuum and one without, there should be, I'm going to predict that there's going to be no change in performance, and therefore atmospheric pressure is irrelevant. But basically here, to answer your question directly, and then I do want to directly answer the super chat, would I accept that as evidence for a dome? I would accept that as interesting, but not evidence for a dome. Obviously, it could be image artifacting. Basically, what I would accept as image for a dome is one where that explanation is the superior explanation to all others. So
fair enough.
It has to cross that threshold. But Tim Pryor is saying that, flat earthers, they believe in a dome with never seeing, and they're coming up with excuses and stuff like that. Do you consider what you're doing to be quote unquote just giving excuses? I think that's the main steak and potatoes of the super chat.
No, it's not excuses. See, there's other things that we talk about that I have in my mind that I haven't spoken about, because we've been going live for 3 hours now. Well, y'all have anyway. So like we haven't talked about everything, but there are just specific things that point to that there's a dome or some type of a cover or ceiling. Okay. One of them is a rainbow. And here y'all go. Go ahead, laugh your asses off, but I still have not
in the super chat. If you really want to laugh, you just got to type in HA on repeat. You can. I'm not going to stop. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So rainbows, y'all. Like, it's just the way that they explain rainbows. And this is just one. Okay. And we're not going to go into a whole thing and go off the topic, but this is just one. The way that they explain rainbows is that light enters into a raindrop, it's refracted at a certain angle, and then it leaves the raindrop and then creates a rainbow. That's the official explanation. Am I correct so far?
That's completely correct, and it's the same phenomenon that we use for spectroscopy. So
you know what? I was actually watching something on spectroscopy. How you say that word? I'm sorry.
Spectroscopy.
Spectroscopy. Yeah. I was just watching something on that a couple of days ago.
I mean, it depends on the device, obviously, but it's using a prism basically, which is what a raindrop is. You can split light into its different wavelengths, and if you then put a detector behind it, you can see how many of which, or how much light of which wavelength comes through, right? That's how spectroscopy works, at least some types of it. So
right. And it has something to do with gases too, though, right?
The same phenomenon that explains rainbows, especially in the visible range, is what we use in everyday science to, analyze stuff.
I don't want to get bogged down in the weeds here about the whole rainbows, because actually, Sacred, I was going to invite you back into this show so that we can have a part 2.
Yeah, that's why I didn't want to go all the way into. That's why I was just saying, like, generally speaking.
Basically, I'll say this: there is an explanation, so you wouldn't consider what you're doing as making excuses. You're simply exploring the explanations, even if they think, people in the live chat I'm talking about here, think those other possible explanations are absolute catastrophic dog shit.
Yeah, it's all perspective. You don't have to agree with what I'm saying, but like, I'm literally providing with this conversation, specifically this subject. Like, there's other things that factor in that would not be able to happen unless there was a secondary surface, refractor or reflector. And this happens with a couple other things. Rainbow is just one of them.
Yeah,
All
you
right,
know that
let's.
there's actually two surfaces in the raindrop, one where it enters and one where it gets deflected on the backside.
That's perfectly correct.
Actually,
Anyway,
that's actually the reason why we get double rainbows, right? Because if there's enough light and there's enough raindrops in there, you can actually get a certain angle where it gets reflected on the backside of the raindrop twice, which is why, first of all, the amplitude decreases, but also why the colors reverse.
yep.
So that's
Until you
also
try to
perfectly good
reproduce it
explanation.
inside with only one light source and just water. If you try to reproduce it inside with an artificial light and just one refractor, which would be the water, you will not be able to reproduce a rainbow. You would only be able to reproduce that with the sunlight, which is potentially already refracted or reflecting off of the dome.
Even if it was refracted, that would make a difference.
It would, because you can't reproduce it with just one light source and one reflector, which would be the water. If you could do that, if I can go inside and I could just
conversation.
yeah, I know, but I didn't want y'all to just leave that and just have the globe Earth just running with that. I'm gonna just put that right there, and I'm not gonna go into all the details. But there's it's not lining up. It's not lining up with reality.
Hang on a second. I just want to clarify something. So you're not saying literally that the rainbow that you see is like on the surface, or is like the reflection on the surface of the dome, right? That's not what you're saying.
No, and I'm gonna be real with y'all. I actually thought that at one point. I thought that the shape of the rainbow was because of the shape of the dome or whatever the case is. I abandoned that position because I was introduced with new information. So I'm able to go ahead and make rational thoughts, based off of incorrect information when I'm getting new information. So this is not just me just thinking just random shit and just trying to stick with flat Earth. Like I want there to be a space, but just some things just don't align. That's all.
All right, and so this is going to be the final question that I ask, and it's the end all be all question. Then we'll go ahead and end the stream. I do want to thank everyone for being here and watching. Hopefully, there will be a part 2 with some of Sacred's friends, because the more, the fucking merrier. Anyway, so here is the final question. We have a cumulative case here. I'm going to make that argument.
Sorry, Red. I'm sorry, but I just found a video where people, make a rainbow shape with literally a flashlight.
I'm going to share that on Twitter. Send that to me.
Sure.
Send that to me on Skype. So what's going to happen is this. I'm just going to go over everything, and then Sacred, I'm going to give you the last word here before we say our goodbyes and tune out. So here it is. I'm going to make the assertion that in this stream, and while we may have been long-winded in getting this far, we have presented a cumulative case for rockets doing what they were doing, especially in regards to the Artemis launch. So we have confirmation that the rocket turned off independently. We have confirmation of booster separation independently. We have confirmation that the tower was able to jettison away from the rocket. That's a rocket working in vacuum. We have confirmation independently of NASA showing that the capsule, the Orion spacecraft, was actually in orbit an hour and 50 minutes after the fact. We have confirmation that it was still in space exactly where it was predicted to be a day after the fact. And we have confirmation from other missions, such as, like, for example, the International Space Station program, where we have measured the altitude, size, and speed of the space station, showing that orbits do indeed, occur with artificial satellites that we ourselves have put there, i.e. a rocket needed to work in space in order for that to even be a thing. We have all of this independent from NASA to show that space travel is possible. Artemis is doing what it was supposed to be doing, and that the fucking memes showing that NASA quote unquote missed the moon are absolutely stupid and retarded. So given all of that, does that at the very least, Sacred, give you some sort of indication that maybe, just maybe, this shit is legitimate?
So you know what? I will be honest. I think the one thing that probably ties everything together is when Astronomy Live stayed extra to catch it circumnavigating the Earth, right? Because without that piece, and if no one ever looked up how the orbital pathway is supposed to take effect, then you wouldn't be able to. because he has that, it shows that the trajectory that they showed with the path is actually what's supposed to be happening. Just because of that one, I'll be honest with you, because just like I think I seen a graphic that Sly had popped up or shared on Twitter, whatever the case, and it showed like the figure 8. And because Astronomy Live stayed that next day and seen that it's something did pass along the sky, we're assuming that's what it was, but it was in the place that they expected it to be. That does tie a lot of these surface level observations together. I will say that.
So it does give you pause to say that maybe, just maybe, NASA is doing what they say they're doing.
Just because of y'all, man, I'm telling you. Just because of you, Reds. That's it.
Hey,
You and
that's
astronomy. That's
still,
it.
that's still good. That's still good. And you know what? I'm going to take it. So, guys, I do want to say thank you so much for being here. It does mean a lot to me to see all my friends and brothers and sisters in the live chat. And so I'm going to go ahead and read a few super chats. And again, real quick, and then we will go ahead and cut the stream and then we'll go from there. Anyway, so Tim Pryor again for $5. I do want to say thank you so much. I appreciate your $5. Yep. And with a spray bottle and light, you can make a rainbow in your house. We're going to get back to that on episode 2. For $5, we have Design Sock 1. I think that's a Q. $5. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Sacred, if you observe a firecracker set off inside a vacuum environment, what would you expect to observe about the environment of its pieces?
The movement of its pieces.
Yeah. Gio, if you want to translate that, I'm not sure what he may actually be asking in this.
I think he's saying that, because you have basically, basically what a firecracker is just kind of like a solid rocket booster, just not with the the exhaust fumes being directed in one way. So you could make the argument that if you have a firecracker in a vacuum and you light it up and you see the pieces flying everywhere, that already indicates that solid rocket boosters at least should work in a vacuum, right?
I see.
Because
how can you light something in a vacuum?
Spice Arcane had a fucking bitch of a time doing it too.
So that's in that case, it's super easy. So the thing about rocket engines is that they carry around both components that you need for a fire, right? They carry around the fuel, but they also carry around the oxidizer. That can be liquid.
No. I get all. I don't want you to go off that because I know we're trying to move through the stream. I'm just talking about specifically a firecracker. How would you light a firecracker in a vacuum?
You can just use the sparks from an electric arc.
Really? Because I've seen videos of them trying to light firecrackers in a vacuum and they couldn't get no flame, just a spark. But I'm just saying that's what I've seen.
That's gonna work. If it has a proper fuse, it's gonna work.
All right, I'm gonna look that up. But yep, you can go ahead, Red.
All right, and so the last super chat we're going to read is from Tim Pryor again. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you very much for the $5. You can reproduce it. Somebody made a video showing you can. Again, we're going to talk about, I know that's in regards to rainbows because that's what his last super chat was. We're going to talk about that on the next episode. So guys, what I'm going to also say to end this out is that on Friday, if you go to my Twitter and you look at my avatar at the very top, you'll see a little microphone there. If you click onto my avatar, you will automatically be thrown into the chat room that is hosted by Sacred. I'm also going to be retweeting it so that if you wish to talk to him in his room, you will have that opportunity. He is, are you the host or the co-host? I want to make sure it's accurate.
So it is my space. I am the host, but I do have help with my co-host Asia and Custom Money Sign. So I am the co-host, but it is my space, so you can call me the host. We're all hosts, but like yeah.
Okay. All right. So Sacred will be the host of that, and I will say that Sacred does allow people to speak. It is not the cataclysmic dog shit that you see on Nathan Oakley's channel. It's a lot better than that.
Thank you, Red. So that means if y'all don't pull up, you guys are scared. It's not us. Thank you, Red.
we're gonna and I'm also gonna say just because it wasn't expressly indicated last time that it happens at 6 p.m. Eastern. That's when I've noticed that the room goes live. So
Yeah,
guys,
so
I am
typically, just real quick, it's typically sometime before between 4:30 and 6. So it's within that range. We're kind of like all over the place because we all got real life shit going on. So it's something between 4:30 and 6 p.m. Eastern time. And then
so
we go all fucking night. I mean, Reds was in there till like 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. That's usually how long we be in there.
yeah, it goes for a long fucking time. So there is opportunity to have your voice heard. So again, it's going to be on Twitter. I will retweet it out on Friday, so be sure to look at it on Friday. And if you're watching the stream after the fact, I will I will post a link to my Twitter page and Sacred's Twitter page, so that you can follow and keep track of that. So if you want to come into this space, you will have that opportunity. A word of note, though, or advice or whatever, it only works on mobile. So you have to come in on a cell phone. It will not work on desktop. So if you're wondering why you're in on desktop and you can't say shit, that's the reason why. It has to be through a cell phone. I don't know why that's a thing. It probably should. And maybe since Elon now owns the damn thing, he should probably fucking fix that. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and end the stream. And we will leave you all here. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. And as always, have a good night. Bye-bye.
Appreciate y'all.
See you.